Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Fiction Domain. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present, What If the Addams Family Adopted 5-Year-Old Harry and Gringotts Made Them His Legal Guardians? If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, Blood Calls to Blood. The moon hung like a pale, watchful eye over Privet Drive as a small boy with unruly black hair huddled in the darkness of the cupboard under the stairs. Harry Potter, just 5 years old, pressed his thin fingers against the wooden door, listening to the Dursleys' television blaring in the living room. His stomach growled. He hadn't been given dinner again after accidentally turning his teacher's wig blue. Freakish things, Uncle Vernon had bellowed, his mustache quivering with rage as he shoved Harry into his cupboard. Won't be tolerated in this house. Harry didn't understand why these strange things happened around him, or why his aunt and uncle hated him for it. He only knew that in this house, he wasn't wanted. Curling up on his threadbare mattress, Harry closed his eyes and dreamed, as he often did, of someone coming to take him away. In his dreams, his parents weren't drunks who died in a car crash, they were heroes, magical people who had loved him. In his dreams, someone remembered he existed. Little did Harry know that at that very moment, in a marble-clad office deep beneath London, someone was remembering him very well indeed. Gornick, senior accounts manager at Gringotts Wizarding Bank, stared at the parchment before him with narrowed eyes. The inheritance test results glowed with a faint silver light, lines of magic connecting names across centuries. As was customary every 5 years, Gringotts was reviewing the status of their dormant accounts, particularly those of ancient and noble houses, and the Potter accounts had triggered a most unexpected alert. Director Ragnarok should see this immediately, Gornick muttered, tapping the parchment with one long finger. The Potter bloodline chart had revealed something the wizarding world had apparently forgotten, or perhaps deliberately obscured. A thin silver line extended from Ignotus Peveril's sister, Isolde, connecting through multiple generations to an American branch of the family, the Addams clan. The goblins of Gringotts took inheritance very seriously. Blood was blood, magic was magic, and galleons were galleons, and all three were currently being mismanaged in the case of the Potter heir. 20 minutes later, Gornick stood before the imposing desk of Director Ragnarok, the head of Gringotts London. The director's office was a cavernous space carved from the living rock, adorned with weapons and treasures acquired over centuries of banking and battle. This is quite irregular, Ragnarok said, examining the parchment through a jeweler's loupe. The Potter boy was placed with his maternal relatives by Albus Dumbledore, acting as his magical guardian. Yet the blood magic shows a stronger familial connection to the Addams family through the paternal line, Gornick pointed out. And our monitoring charms indicate the boy is being mistreated. Ragnarok's expression darkened. Mistreated, you say? Starved. Confined. Neglected. Gornick's teeth gleamed in the lamplight. The wealth preservation charms are reacting to his declining health. If the boy dies before he can access his vaults, we lose significant management fees. This was, of course, only part of the truth. Goblins were not above using profit motives to justify their actions to wizard kind, but among themselves, they held to a stricter code. A child heir being mistreated was a breach of the natural order, doubly so when that heir was the last of an ancient house and a vault holder in good standing. Ragnarok drummed his fingers on his desk, the gold rings he wore clicking against the polished stone. The Addams family, he mused. I've dealt with them before. Eccentric by wizard standards, but they honor their contracts to the letter and have never once complained about our interest rates. In goblin terms, this was the highest of praise. And they practiced the old magic. Indeed. Gornick shuffled through his papers. Our American branch confirms the Addams vault has been active for over 300 years. They're considered unusual, but their gold is untainted and their magic strong. Very well. Ragnarok reached for a seal carved from dragon bone. Invoke the Blood Inheritance Protocol. The 1749 treaty specifically allows us to intervene when an heir's well-being is at risk. He pressed the seal into a pot of molten silver wax. Contact the Addams family. If they're willing to claim the boy, we can transfer guardianship through the old rights without ministry interference. Gornick smiled, a sight that would have sent most wizards running for cover. And Dumbledore? Ragnar's answering smile was equally terrifying. We'll be presented with a fait accompli, as the French say. The old wizard plays his games, but in matters of inheritance, Gringotts' authority remains absolute. Halfway across the world, in a mansion that seemed to have grown rather than been built from the haunted ground it stood upon, Gomez Addams was in the midst of his morning ritual, balancing upside down on his head while reading the financial section of the newspaper. Magnificent, he exclaimed, flipping upright in one fluid motion. Tish! The morgue construction company we invested in has doubled its profits. People are simply dying to get in. Morticia Addams glanced up from her arrangement of thorny black roses, her pale fingers delicately snipping off the blooms and keeping only the stems. How wonderful, darling. Perhaps we should send them a congratulatory wreath of poison ivy. The Addams mansion was a monument to the macabre, filled with artifacts both magical and mundane that most would consider horrifying but which the Addams family found homey and comforting. Suits of armor that occasionally moved on their own, paintings of ancestors that watched visitors with judging eyes, and a severed hand named thing that scuttled about performing household tasks, all perfectly normal in the Addams household. A scratching sound at the window drew Morticia's attention. A raven perched there, larger and more intelligent-looking than most, with a sealed envelope in its beak. The wax seal gleamed with the emblem of Gringotts. Gomez, we have correspondence from the goblins. She opened the window, and the raven hopped inside, bowing before dropping the letter onto a silver tray held by Thing, who had scurried over to assist. Gomez bounded across the room, his perpetual energy and enthusiasm undiminished. Splendid. I always enjoy hearing from our diminutive financial friends. Such appreciation for creative accounting. Morticia broke the seal with a letter opener fashioned from a human femur, unfolding the heavy parchment with graceful fingers. Her eyes, darkly lined and expressive, widened slightly as she read, the Addams equivalent of extreme shock. Gomez, she said, her voice a melodic whisper that somehow carried perfectly. We have family we didn't know about. In England. Gomez was instantly at her side, reading over her shoulder. The Potters? Ah yes, of course. Charles Potter married Doria Black in the 1930s. The Blacks are your cousins, aren't they, Tish? Second cousins thrice removed on mother's side, she confirmed. But I had no idea the Potters traced back to the Peverills, and threw them to us. Blood will tell, cara mia. Gomez exclaimed, taking the letter and reading further. His exuberant expression faltered. Great Aunt Slytherin's snake pit, the boy is an orphan. The last of his line. And being kept by, non-magical relatives. Morticia's expression darkened, storm clouds gathering in her eyes. The letter says he's being mistreated. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. A magical child. Our kin. Mistreated by those who fear magic. This cannot stand. Gomez declared, beginning to pace with furious energy. The boy is an Addams, however distant. Family is everything. Family is everything, Morticia agreed, the sacred motto of their clan resonating in her velvet voice. At that moment, their children entered the room, Wednesday, 7 years old and already developing her mother's deadly grace, and Pugsley, a round-faced 6-year-old with his father's manic energy. Mother, Wednesday said, holding up a doll with multiple pins stuck through it, Pugsley won't let me practice my voodoo on him anymore. She didn't even use real curses, Pugsley complained. Just pins. Morticia shared a look with Gomez. Children, come here. We have important family news. The children approached, instantly sensing the shift in atmosphere. It seems you have a cousin, Gomez explained, kneeling to their level. A boy named Harry Potter. He's 5 years old, and he's all alone in the world except for terrible non-magical people who are unkind to him. Wednesday's dark eyes narrowed. They're hurting our family? I'm afraid so, my little viper, Morticia said, stroking her daughter's sleek black hair. We should blow them up, Pugsley suggested matter-of-factly. An excellent suggestion for another time, my boy, Gomez said, ruffling his son's hair. But first, we need to bring young Harry home. Are we going to adopt him? Wednesday asked. If he'll have us, Morticia said. Family is everything, the children finished in unison, having been raised on the principle. We'll need to prepare, Gomez said, suddenly all business. Fester. Mama. Family meeting. Uncle Fester appeared with surprising speed, popping up from a trapdoor in the floor, his pale, hairless head gleaming in the dim light. You bellowed. Grandmama shuffled in from the direction of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron that seemed to be moving slightly of its own accord. Is it time for my special soup? I've got fresh eye of newt. Not yet, Mama, Gomez said. We have a family emergency. The goblins have informed us we have a young relative in England who needs rescuing. Rescuing? Fester's eyes lit up. With explosions? Perhaps, Morticia said diplomatically. The letter requests our presence at Gringotts, London tomorrow for an inheritance ritual that could grant us guardianship. England! Gomez exclaimed. Land of fog and gloom, of haunted moors and ancient curses. We'll leave immediately. Lurch. As if summoned by magic itself, the towering, cadaverous butler appeared with a sonorous, "You rang? Prepare the luggage, old man. We're off to claim the newest member of the Addams clan." Harry woke to the sound of his cupboard door being wrenched open. Aunt Petunia's horse-like face peered in at him, her lips pinched with displeasure. Up. Get up now. You need to clean yourself up. Harry blinked in confusion. It was unusual for his aunt to care about his appearance. Someone's coming to see you, she hissed, thrusting a set of Dudley's old clothes at him, less worn than what he usually received. Government people. Asking questions. Vernon says we have to make you look normal. Harry's heart leapt. Someone was coming. To see him specifically. This had never happened before. Hurry up, boy, she snapped, turning away. And do something about that hair. Harry scrambled to obey, washing his face in the bathroom sink and attempting to flatten his perpetually messy hair. The clothes hung off his thin frame, but they were cleaner than his usual attire. Hope, that dangerous emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel, flickered in his chest. In the kitchen, Uncle Vernon was pacing, his face an alarming shade of purple. Ruddy government busybodies, he muttered. Poking their noses where they don't belong. We took the boy in out of the goodness of our hearts. Aunt Petunia was stress-cleaning already spotless countertops. What if they're, like them, she whispered, glancing fearfully at Harry. Nonsense, Vernon blustered, though he didn't sound convinced. Probably just routine checks. We've nothing to hide. The boy's fed, clothed, sheltered. Harry knew better than to contradict this blatant exaggeration of his care, instead silently taking his place at the table where, unusually, a small portion of breakfast awaited him. The doorbell rang precisely at 10 o'clock. Uncle Vernon straightened his tie, plastered on a smile that looked more like a grimace, and went to answer it. Harry heard murmured voices, then his uncle's forced jovial tones, "Do come in. We've been expecting you." The people who entered the Dursleys' immaculate living room were unlike anyone Harry had ever seen before. At the front stood a man in an impeccably tailored pinstriped suit that somehow seemed both elegant and slightly wrong, as if designed by someone who had only a passing familiarity with human fashion. His hair was slicked back, his mustache thin and precise, and his eyes gleamed with manic energy. Beside him stood a woman of ethereal beauty, tall and willowy in a dress that seemed to flow like liquid shadow, her skin pale as moonlight. Behind them came two children, a girl with a deadpan expression and severe black braids, and a pudgy boy with a cheerful, somewhat explosive demeanor. Following them was a bald man with sunken eyes and a wild grin, and an elderly woman who reminded Harry of the witches in storybooks, right down to the wart on her nose. Most imposing of all was the towering butler who had to duck to enter the door, his face a study in cadaverous solemnity. "Ah! You must be the Dursleys," the mustached man exclaimed, pumping Vernon's hand with excessive enthusiasm. "Gomez Addams, at your service. And this is my wife, Morticia, our children Wednesday and Pugsley, my brother Fester, my mother Eudora, and our butler Lurch." The giant butler produced a sonorous that might have been a greeting. Uncle Vernon's face cycled through several colors before settling on a mottled gray. You're not from the government." "Government?" Gomez laughed. "Heavens, no. Far more important business brings us here today. We've come about young Harry." Harry, who had been watching wide-eyed from the doorway, felt every eye in the room turn to him. The strange family regarded him with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that might have been recognition. Harry, the woman, Morticia, said in a voice like midnight velvet. "We've been looking forward to meeting you." The girl, Wednesday, stepped forward and examined Harry with unnerving intensity. "You have our great-grandfather's eyes," she stated matter-of-factly. I do." Harry stammered, completely bewildered. "Addams' eyes," Gomez proclaimed. "The color of killing curses. Magnificent." Aunt Petunia made a strangled noise. You're one of them." "Freaks. Freaks," Fester repeated, sounding delighted by the description. Morticia's smile remained fixed, but the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. "We prefer the term magically gifted," she said smoothly. "Though I understand the distinction might be difficult for you to grasp." "Now see here," Vernon blustered, finding his voice at last. "We don't want any of your unnaturalness in this house. We've done our best to stamp it out of the boy." He fell silent as Gomez's expression transformed from jovial to dangerous in the blink of an eye. "Stamp it out," Gomez repeated, his voice deceptively soft. "You tried to stamp out Harry's magic?" "His heritage," Morticia added, moving to stand beside Harry, one pale hand coming to rest protectively on his shoulder. Harry felt a strange warmth where she touched him, not just physical warmth, but something deeper, as if a part of him that had been sleeping was beginning to stir. "We took him in," Vernon protested. "Fed him, clothed him, poorly," Wednesday interjected, eyeing Harry's oversized clothes with disdain. "Kept a roof over his head. And this is the thanks we get? Invaded by freaks." Grandmama cackled, a sound that raised the hairs on the back of Harry's neck. "Oh, dearie, you have no idea how freakish we can be. Perhaps a demonstration?" Fester suggested, reaching into his coat. "Not now, old man," Gomez said, though he looked tempted. "We're here on official business." He produced an envelope bearing a strange wax seal. "By order of Gringotts Bank and the ancient laws of magical inheritance, we're here to claim guardianship of Harry James Potter, our blood relative." "Relative?" Harry whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "Oh yes, child," Morticia said, kneeling gracefully to meet his eyes. "You are family. Distant, but family nonetheless. And Addamses always take care of their own." "This is preposterous," Vernon bellowed. "You can't just waltz in here and take the boy." "Actually," came a new voice, "they can." Everyone turned to see a severe-looking individual standing in the doorway. Short in stature with long fingers, pointed ears, and teeth that seemed too sharp for comfort, he was clearly not human. Harry stared in fascination. "Gornak!" Gomez exclaimed. "Excellent timing. Dursleys, this is Senior Accounts Manager Gornak of Gringotts Bank." "A pleasure, I'm sure," the goblin said with a smile that suggested it was anything but. I've brought the paperwork and am authorized to witness the transfer of guardianship. Petunia had gone as white as a sheet. Vernon, she whispered. It's one of those creatures. From that bank. I demand you leave my property at once. Vernon shouted, though his voice wavered. All of you. Gornick regarded him with the same interest one might show a particularly unpleasant insect. Mr. Dursley, you were never Harry Potter's legal guardian in the magical world. Merely his temporary caretaker. A role you have. He paused, glancing at Harry's thin frame and the cupboard door visible from the hallway, failed to fulfill adequately. The blood wards, Petunia began, surprising everyone. Are irrelevant when stronger blood ties exist, Gornick cut her off. The Addams family connection, while distant, supersedes yours in magical law when combined with evidence of neglect. Harry could scarcely believe what he was hearing. These strange people were his family. And they wanted him. Harry, Morticia said gently. Would you like to come with us? To be part of our family? Harry looked at her, then at the rest of the Addamses. They were odd, certainly, frightening, even, but they had called him family. They looked at his eyes and saw heritage, not freakishness. You really want me? He asked in a small voice. Want you? Gomez boomed. My dear boy, we crossed an ocean to find you. You're an Addams. One of us. Pugsley nodded enthusiastically. You can help me with my explosives collection. And I need someone to practice my hexes on when Pugsley hides, Wednesday added, which Harry supposed was meant to be welcoming. I'd like that, Harry said, a smile spreading across his face. I'd like that very much. Gornick nodded briskly. Excellent. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, if you would sign these release forms. It's merely a formality, as the magical guardian transfer is already in process, but it will make things simpler in the non-magical world. Vernon looked ready to explode, but Petunia placed a restraining hand on his arm. Sign it, Vernon, she said tersely. The sooner they're gone, the sooner things can go back to normal. With shaking hands and much muttered invective, Vernon signed the papers Gornick presented. The goblin checked them over, nodded, and handed copies to Gomez. Do you have any belongings you wish to take, Mr. Potter? Gornick asked. Harry thought of the few broken toys and oversized clothes in his cupboard. No, sir. Nothing. Something dark flickered in Morticia's eyes. Then we shall provide everything you need, Harry. A new beginning. Splendid. Gomez declared. To Gringotts, then. The inheritance ritual awaits. As they prepared to leave, Fester paused by Vernon, leaning in conspiratorially. You know, trying to stamp out magic usually just makes it explode later. Much more violently. He grinned, showing too many teeth. Sleep well. The Dursleys' faces were a study in terrified relief as the strange procession departed, taking Harry with them. As the door closed behind them, Harry heard Dudley's plaintive voice from upstairs where he'd been hiding. Are the freaks gone yet, Mummy? For the first time in his life, Harry found he didn't mind being called a freak. Not if it meant being like the Addamses. The black car that waited outside Privet Drive was longer and more ornate than any vehicle Harry had seen before. It resembled a hearse more than a family car, with gleaming silver fixtures and darkly tinted windows. Our humble transportation, Gomez announced, helping Harry into the spacious interior. Nothing like the family train back home, of course, but it serves its purpose. Harry settled onto the plush velvet seats, marveling at the space inside. It seemed far larger than should have been possible from the exterior dimensions. The Addamses arranged themselves around him, with Morticia gracefully taking the seat to his left while Wednesday claimed the spot on his right. Are you really my family? Harry asked as the car pulled away from Privet Drive, hopefully forever. Indeed we are, young Harry, Gomez confirmed. Through your father's line, back to the Peverils, and from there to the Addams clan. Distant cousins, but family nonetheless. Blood calls to blood, Morticia added softly. Magic recognizes its own. But my aunt said my parents were drunks who died in a car crash, Harry said hesitantly. The temperature in the car seemed to drop several degrees. The Addamses exchanged looks of genuine shock, an expression Harry was beginning to realize took quite a lot to produce in this unusual family. A car crash? Fester exclaimed. James and Lily Potter? Impossible. Your parents, Morticia said, her voice gentle but vibrating with suppressed emotion, were murdered, Harry. By a dark wizard. They died protecting you. Harry felt as though the world had tilted on its axis. Murdered? They were, like you. Magical? Some of the finest magical practitioners of their generation, Gornick confirmed from his seat opposite. Your father from an ancient and noble house, your mother a brilliant witch despite her non-magical origins. Those Dursleys, Grandmama muttered, stirring something in a small vial she produced from her handbag. Lying to the boy about his own heritage. In my day, we had ways of dealing with such people. Now, Mother, Gomez cautioned, though without much conviction. We've retrieved Harry. That's what matters. Harry's mind was reeling. His parents had been magical. They hadn't died in an accident. They'd been murdered protecting him. But, why didn't anyone tell me? Why was I left with the Dursleys? Politics, Gornick said simply. And manipulation. Your placement was arranged by Albus Dumbledore, against the provisions in your parents' will. Which we shall discuss in detail after the inheritance ritual, Morticia interjected, seeing Harry's overwhelmed expression. There will be time for all your questions, Harry. For now, know that you are safe, and with family who will never lie to you about who you are. Wednesday, who had been studying Harry intently, spoke up. Your scar is cursed. Harry's hand flew to his forehead, to the lightning-shaped mark he'd had for as long as he could remember. Cursed. Oh yes, she confirmed with clinical interest. Dark magic. Very dark. Grandmama, don't you smell it? Grandmama leaned forward, sniffing the air around Harry. Indeed I do. Smells like soul magic. Nasty business. Harry looked between them, alarmed. Is it dangerous? All the best magic is dangerous, my boy. Gomez declared cheerfully. But not to worry. The goblins have the finest curse breakers in the world. If there's something amiss, they'll set it right during the ritual. And if they can't, Wednesday added with what might have been an attempt at reassurance, Grandmama knows 73 exorcism rituals from 6 continents. 74, the old woman corrected. I picked up a new one in Tasmania last year. Involves the freshly harvested liver of a Tasmanian devil and 3 virgin tears. Harry wasn't entirely sure this was comforting, but the matter-of-fact way they discussed magic, real magic, made it seem almost normal. It was certainly a far cry from the Dursleys' fearful denial of anything unnatural. The car turned down an unfamiliar London street and came to a stop before a grand marble building that Harry had never noticed before. A strange verse was carved above its bronze doors, Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed for those who take, but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. Gringotts Bank, Gornick announced with unmistakable pride. The financial backbone of wizarding Britain and keeper of inheritance law. As they exited the car, Harry noticed that passers-by on the street seemed not to see the imposing building at all, their eyes sliding from the shops on one side to those on the other. They can't see it, he realized aloud. Muggle-repelling charms, Pugsley explained, using a term Harry didn't recognize. Non-magical people can't see magical places unless they're specially invited. Like us. Fester added cheerfully. The Addams family practices magic, but we're not part of the wand-waving wizard community. Different traditions, you see. But gold is gold, and the goblins don't discriminate when it comes to customers with proper bloodlines and full vaults. Harry followed his newfound family up the marble steps, past a pair of goblins in scarlet and gold uniforms who bowed them through the doors. Inside, the bank was a marvel of marble and precious metals, with high counters behind which more goblins were weighing coins, examining jewels, and scratching in ledgers with long quills. Gornik led them not to the counters but to a side door marked with symbols Harry couldn't read. "The ritual chamber has been prepared," he informed them. "Director Ragnarok himself will oversee the proceedings." They descended a spiraling staircase that seemed to go far deeper than should have been possible, eventually emerging into a vast circular chamber carved from living rock. The walls glittered with veins of what looked like gold and silver, and ancient runes were etched into every surface. In the center of the room stood a raised dais with a stone altar, around which 7 goblins in formal attire were arranging crystal phials and ceremonial daggers. At their entrance, an elderly goblin with an impressive array of gold ornaments adorning his ears and a sash of woven platinum across his chest stepped forward. "The House of Addams," he greeted with a formal bow. "And young heir Potter. I am Director Ragnarok. Welcome to the heart of Gringotts." Gomez returned the bow with equal formality. "Director Ragnarok, we are honored. May your gold always flow and your enemies tremble. And may your vaults overflow and your family prosper," Ragnarok returned, completing what was clearly a traditional exchange. His sharp eyes turned to Harry. "So this is the Potter heir. You have your mother's magic about you, child, and your father's bloodline." Harry, feeling very small and uncertain, managed a polite, "Thank you, sir." Ragnarok seemed pleased by the respectful address. "Come, young one. The ritual will confirm your bloodline and allow for the formal transfer of guardianship. It will also—" His eyes flicked to Harry's scar, "address certain magical anomalies." "The curse," Wednesday said knowingly. "Indeed, young Miss Addams. Your family's sensitivity to such things is, as always, impressive." Morticia placed a reassuring hand on Harry's shoulder. "The ritual will not harm you, Harry. In fact, it will likely make you feel better than you ever have. More alive." Gomez added enthusiastically. "Sometimes literally," Fester muttered, earning a sharp look from Morticia. "I'm ready," Harry said, with more courage than he felt. These people, his family, seemed to think this was all perfectly normal, and they had shown him more care in the past hour than the Dursleys had in 5 years. Ragnarok nodded approvingly. "Brave, like your parents. Very well. Mr. and Mrs. Addams, please take your positions at the north point of the altar. Young Potter in the center. The rest of you may observe from the outer circle." As everyone moved into position, Harry found himself standing on the stone altar, which was engraved with the same strange symbols that adorned the walls. Gomez and Morticia stood at one edge, their expressions solemn but encouraging. "The blood inheritance ritual has 3 purposes today," Ragnarok announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. "First, to confirm the bloodline connection between houses Potter and Addams. Second, to transfer magical guardianship from Albus Dumbledore to Gomez and Morticia Addams. And third, to cleanse any foreign magics that may be interfering with heir Potter's natural state." He approached Harry with a silver knife, its blade so thin it was almost translucent. 3 drops of blood, freely given, heir Potter. No more, no less." Harry hesitated only briefly before extending his hand. The knife was so sharp he barely felt it as Ragnarok made a small cut on his finger. 3 perfect droplets of blood fell onto the stone, where they seemed to be absorbed instantly. As soon as the 3rd drop disappeared, the runes on the altar began to glow with golden light. The light spread, following patterns in the stone that Harry hadn't noticed before, creating a complex web of illuminated lines that eventually reached Gomez and Morticia. "Blood calls to blood," Ragnarok intoned. "Blood answers," the Addamses responded in unison. The goblin produced a scroll of parchment and laid it on the altar beside Harry. Where his blood had fallen, words began to appear in shimmering red ink, forming a family tree that expanded across the page. Harry watched, fascinated, as names appeared, connected by golden lines. At the bottom was his own, Harry James Potter, son of James Fremont Potter and Lily Evans Potter. Following his father's line upward, the tree branched and connected, showing generations of Potters, then Peverills, and finally, through a distant branch, the name Addams. The blood confirms the connection, Ragnarok declared. Distant, but true. All Addamses are connected, Gomez said proudly. Whether by blood, marriage, or glorious hexes. Ragnarok nodded and waved a gnarled hand over the parchment. The family tree faded, replaced by legal text that Harry couldn't read from his position. The guardianship transfer, the goblin explained. By right of blood relation and evidence of neglect in his current placement, magical guardianship of Harry James Potter is to be transferred from Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore to Gomez and Morticia Addams. He looked to the couple. Do you accept this sacred responsibility, to guard, guide, and nurture this child as your own blood? We do, they answered without hesitation. And do you, Harry James Potter, accept the House of Addams as your guardians, to obey, respect, and learn from until you reach your majority? Harry looked at Gomez and Morticia, at their strange but unmistakably kind faces, and felt something he had rarely experienced before, certainty. I do, he said clearly. Ragnarok nodded, satisfied. Then let it be sealed in magic and blood. He took Harry's still bleeding finger and pressed it to the parchment. Then Gomez and Morticia each made small cuts on their own fingers, adding their blood beside Harry's. Where the 3 blood drops met, a golden seal formed, bearing a coat of arms Harry didn't recognize, half the Potter crest and half a strange, spidery symbol that must belong to the Addamses. It is done, Ragnarok declared. In the eyes of magic and goblin law, Harry James Potter is now a ward of the House of Addams, with all rights and protections therein. A warm feeling spread through Harry, as if something inside him had clicked into place. He felt connected, in a way he never had before. Now, Ragnarok said, his expression turning more serious, we address the foreign magic. 6 goblins stepped forward, taking positions around the altar. Each held a crystal rod that gleamed with inner light. This may be uncomfortable, Herr Potter, Ragnarok warned. But it is necessary. The scar on your forehead contains magic that does not belong to you, dark magic of the worst kind. Soul magic, Grandmama repeated from the outer circle, her usual cackle absent. Harry swallowed nervously. Will it hurt? Less than living with it, Wednesday observed practically. Ragnarok raised an eyebrow at her comment but didn't disagree. Brace yourself, young heir. The goblins began to chant in their harsh, guttural language, their crystal rods pointing toward Harry. The runes on the altar blazed brighter, and Harry felt a strange pressure building around his scar. It wasn't precisely painful, but it wasn't pleasant either, like having a splinter slowly drawn out of his skin. The pressure increased, and Harry gritted his teeth, determined not to cry out. Then his scar seemed to split open, not physically, but magically, and a black, oily substance began to seep out. It hovered in the air above him, writhing like a living thing, emitting a high-pitched wail that made Harry's ears ache. Ah, Morticia observed with clinical interest. A soul fragment. How barbaric. And poorly executed, Grandmama added disapprovingly. If you're going to split your soul, at least do it properly. The goblins' chanting reached a crescendo, and the black substance was suddenly contained within a sphere of golden light. It thrashed wildly, its screams muted by the magical barrier. What is that? Harry asked, horrified yet fascinated. A piece of the dark wizard who killed your parents, Ragnarok explained grimly. It seems when he tried to kill you, something went wrong. His curse rebounded, destroying his body, but a fragment of his shattered soul attached itself to you. He's been living in my head. Harry felt sick at the thought. Not consciously, Morticia assured him. More like a parasite than a houseguest. Fascinating, Wednesday commented, studying the writhing soul piece. I want one. Absolutely not, Morticia said firmly. Soul magic is strictly off-limits until you're at least 16, Wednesday. We've discussed this. The girl looked disappointed but didn't argue. Ragnak made a sharp gesture, and the sphere of light containing the soul fragment contracted rapidly. There was a final, muffled shriek, and then the black substance was simply gone. Harry gasped as a wave of relief washed over him. His head felt clearer than it ever had, as if a constant pressure he hadn't even been aware of had suddenly lifted. Colors seemed brighter, sounds sharper. The cleansing is complete, Ragnak announced. The soul fragment has been destroyed. Marvelous work. Gomez exclaimed. The precision, the technique. Goblins truly are the masters of magical extraction. Ragnak inclined his head at the compliment. The ritual is complete. Herr Potter is now officially a ward of the House of Addams, cleansed of foreign magic, and recognized by Gringotts as the heir to the Potter vaults. Harry stepped down from the altar on slightly wobbly legs, immediately enveloped in a hug from Morticia. Her embrace was cool but comforting, smelling faintly of roses and something else he couldn't identify. "Welcome to the family, Harry," she murmured. Gomez clapped him on the shoulder. "Capital job, my boy. Stood up to soul extraction like a true Addams. We'll make a proper eccentric of you yet." Pugsley and Wednesday approached, regarding their new family member with interest. "Does this mean he's our brother now?" Pugsley asked. "Cousin brother," Wednesday corrected pedantically. "Second cousin once removed, to be precise, but functionally a sibling." "Brother," Morticia stated definitively. "Family is more than blood, children. Harry is your brother now." Harry felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "I've always wanted a family," he admitted softly. "And now you have one." Fester exclaimed, giving Harry a hug that smelled faintly of gunpowder and ozone. "The most loving, loyal, lethally protective family in the world." Grandmama patted his cheek with a gnarled hand. "You're a bit peaky, child. Nothing my special stew won't fix. Put some meat on those bones." Even Lurch, who had remained silently observant throughout the ritual, approached and placed a massive hand gently on Harry's head with a rumbling, "Welcome, home." Director Ragnak cleared his throat. "There are financial matters to discuss regarding the Potter vaults, but those can wait for another day. I believe the young heir has had quite enough excitement for now." "Quite right," Gomez agreed. "Time to take our newest family member home. Harry, my boy, you're going to love the mansion. We have a swamp, a graveyard, man-eating plants, everything a growing boy needs." Harry wasn't entirely sure that was true, but he found himself smiling anyway. This strange, macabre family had rescued him, accepted him, and cleansed him of a dark wizard's soul fragment all in one day. Whatever awaited him at the Addams mansion had to be better than life with the Dursleys. As they ascended from the ritual chamber, Harry walking between Wednesday and Pugsley with the adults following behind, he heard Morticia murmur to Gomez, "The boy has suffered, mon cher. Those Dursleys. Justice will find them, cara mia," Gomez assured her, his usually jovial tone hardened with steel. "One way or another. No one mistreats an Addams and escapes unscathed." Harry pretended not to hear, but a small part of him, perhaps the part that had been freed from the dark wizard's influence, found itself looking forward to whatever justice the Addams family might consider appropriate for the Dursleys. The international port key, a particularly grim-looking stuffed raven, deposited the expanded Addams family on the front lawn of their ancestral home. Harry, who had never experienced magical transportation before, landed in an ungraceful heap, his stomach lurching alarmingly. "First port key?" Pugsley asked sympathetically, helping him up. "First everything," Harry admitted, dusting himself off before getting his first proper look at his new home. The Addams mansion loomed against the twilight sky, a Victorian monstrosity of Gothic architecture that seemed to violate several laws of physics and good taste simultaneously. Towers spiraled at improbable angles, gargoyles leered from every corner, and the whole structure seemed to radiate a peculiar energy that made the hairs on Harry's arms stand up. It should have been terrifying, but instead, Harry felt an unexpected sense of belonging. "It's beautiful," he breathed. Gomez beamed with pride. "Isn't it? Been in the family for generations. Some say it's alive, you know. Grows a new room whenever an Addams child is born." "That's just a story, Father," Wednesday said dismissively. "The house doesn't grow rooms when children are born." She paused, her dark eyes flicking to Harry. "It grows rooms when it wants someone to get lost forever." Harry blinked, unsure if she was joking. Her deadpan expression revealed nothing. "Now, Wednesday," Morticia chided gently, "don't frighten your brother on his first day. The house hasn't consumed anyone in at least a decade." This was apparently meant to be reassuring. As they approached the front door, it swung open of its own accord. A disembodied hand scuttled out to greet them, gesturing excitedly. "Thing!" Gomez exclaimed. "Meet the newest member of our family. Harry, this is Thing, he's been with the Addamses for generations. Marvelous fellow, handles the mail, plays a mean game of chess." The hand turned to Harry and extended itself, or rather, itself, in greeting. After a moment's hesitation, Harry shook it. Thing's grip was firm but not crushing, and there was something unmistakably friendly in the way it patted his wrist before releasing him. "Nice to meet you, Thing," Harry said, deciding that talking to a disembodied hand wasn't the strangest thing that had happened that day by a long shot. Thing seemed pleased, giving him a thumbs up before scurrying back inside. "Come along, Harry," Morticia urged, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let's get you settled. You must be exhausted after such an eventful day." The interior of the mansion was as gloriously macabre as its exterior. Suits of armor that seemed to watch as they passed, stuffed creatures Harry couldn't identify, paintings whose eyes followed movement, and decor that ranged from medieval torture instruments to exotic plants that snapped at the air as they walked by. "We've prepared the East Tower room for you," Morticia explained as they climbed a grand staircase. "It has the loveliest view of the graveyard, and the morning fog rolls in most enchantingly." "My old room," Gomez added nostalgically. "Had my first near-death experience there when I was about your age. The chandelier came loose, nearly impaled me. Marvelous craftsmanship on those spikes." They passed what appeared to be a small dungeon, Pugsley's timeout room, a laboratory filled with bubbling concoctions, Grandmama's potion space, and a room where various plants with teeth and tentacles grew in controlled chaos, Morticia's conservatory. Finally, they reached a heavy wooden door at the top of a spiraling staircase. Carved into its surface was a stylized lightning bolt that matched Harry's scar. "The house knows you're here," Wednesday observed, sounding almost impressed. Gomez threw the door open with a flourish. "Your domain, my boy. What do you think?" The room beyond was spacious and circular, with high windows that offered glimpses of the starry sky and the sprawling grounds below. A four-poster bed draped in rich, dark fabrics dominated one wall, while bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes lined another. A massive desk stood near the windows, and a comfortable sitting area with a small fireplace occupied the center of the room. It was elegant, slightly gothic, but not frightening, almost as if the house had deliberately tempered its usual macabre aesthetic for its newest and youngest resident. "This is mine?" Harry asked in disbelief. After 5 years in a cupboard, the vast space seemed impossible. "All yours," Morticia confirmed. "Though the children like to play together, so expect Pugsley and Wednesday to visit often." "Speaking of which," Gomez said, checking an ornate pocket watch, "it's getting late, and young Harry has had quite the day. Children, say goodnight to your brother." Pugsley gave Harry an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked him over. "Tomorrow I'll show you my collection of explosives. And the quicksand pit. And I'll introduce you to my spiders," Wednesday added, not hugging him but giving him a solemn nod that somehow felt equally meaningful. "The venomous ones are my favorites." After the children were shooed off to their own rooms, Morticia knelt before Harry, meeting his eyes directly. "Harry, I know this has been overwhelming. Everything has changed so quickly. If you need anything, anything at all, your father and I are just down the hall. Your father and I, she had said, so naturally. Harry felt that curious warmth spreading through his chest again. Thank you, he managed, his voice slightly choked. For everything. Think nothing of it, my boy. Gomez declared, ruffling Harry's perpetually messy hair. You're an Addams now. And tomorrow, your education begins. Education? Harry repeated. Of course. Magic, fencing, explosives, dancing the mamushka, all the essentials. Can't have you going to Hogwarts unprepared. Hogwarts? The wizarding school in Britain, Morticia explained. You'll receive your letter when you turn 11, as your parents did. But until then, we'll ensure you have a proper Addams upbringing to complement your formal magical education. For now, though, she continued, producing a set of silk pajamas seemingly from nowhere, rest. Your things will be here in the morning. Lurch and Fester are arranging a complete wardrobe and everything else a young wizard might need. They left him then, with promises of breakfast and exploration in the morning. Harry changed into the pajamas, the first new clothes that had ever been truly his, and climbed into the enormous bed. The mattress was perfectly firm yet comfortable, the sheets cool and smooth against his skin. As he lay there in the soft darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of his new home, the distant hooting of owls, the creak of aged wood, the faint howling that might have been wind through the towers or something else entirely, Harry reflected on the extraordinary turn his life had taken. This morning, he had been Harry Potter, unwanted burden of the Dursley household. Now he was Harry Potter Addams, as Gomez had enthusiastically declared during the Portkey registration, heir to an ancient and noble house, ward of the strangest and most wonderful family he could imagine, and free of both the Dursleys and the dark wizard's soul fragment that had been leeching off him for years. For the first time in his memory, Harry fell asleep feeling safe, wanted, and hopeful for the future, unaware that in a castle far to the north, a series of silver instruments in the headmaster's office had suddenly stopped spinning and emitting smoke, causing an elderly wizard with a long white beard to sit up in alarm. But that was a problem for another day. Tonight, Harry Potter slept soundly in his tower room, officially home at last. Chapter 2, An Addams Education. The morning after Harry's arrival at the Addams mansion began with a scream. Harry bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against his ribs, before realizing the blood-curdling shriek was actually coming from outside. He scrambled to the nearest window, half expecting to witness some horrible accident, only to see Pugsley dangling upside down from an ancient oak tree. Wednesday stood below, methodically sawing through the rope that held her brother suspended 30 feet in the air. "Good morning, Harry," Pugsley called cheerfully, waving as if his impending fall were no more concerning than a light drizzle. "Sleep well?" Before Harry could respond, the rope snapped. Pugsley plummeted toward the ground with another gleeful scream, only to bounce on what appeared to be an invisible cushion of air about 3 feet above the hard earth. He hovered there momentarily before the magic dissipated, dropping him the remaining distance with a soft thud. "Disappointing," Wednesday observed dispassionately, tucking the saw into a pocket of her black dress. "The emergency charms father installed are too reliable." "We could try the cliff next time," Pugsley suggested, dusting himself off. Harry blinked, unsure whether to be alarmed or amused. After a lifetime with the Dursleys, where the slightest hint of anything abnormal was met with punishment, the casual acceptance of both magic and danger was disorienting. A gentle knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he called, turning from the window. Morticia glided into the room, looking as elegant and composed as she had the day before, though now dressed in a different but equally dramatic black gown. "Good morning, Harry. I trust the children's morning recreation didn't disturb you too much. Is Pugsley okay?" Harry asked, glancing back toward the window. "Of course, dear." Morticia smiled, a genuine if slightly macabre expression. "Addams' children are remarkably resilient. It's in the blood." She approached and studied him thoughtfully. "You slept well?" No nightmares? Harry considered this. For the first time in memory, his sleep had been deep and undisturbed by the strange dreams that normally plagued him, dreams of green light and high-pitched laughter that he now understood were fragments of memory from his parents' murder. Better than ever, he admitted. The ritual cleansing seems to have helped, Morticia observed with satisfaction. Now, come downstairs when you're ready. Grandmama has prepared a special breakfast to welcome you properly, and afterward, your father wishes to begin your education. The casual way she referred to Gomez as his father sent a warm feeling spreading through Harry's chest. I'll be right down. After Morticia departed, Harry discovered a wardrobe that had definitely not been in the room the night before. Inside hung an assortment of clothing in his exact size, everything from casual wear to what appeared to be miniature versions of Gomez's dapper suits, all in dark colors but of the finest quality Harry had ever touched. He selected simple black trousers and a deep green button-up shirt, marveling at clothes that actually fit him. As he dressed, he caught his reflection in an ornate standing mirror and barely recognized himself. Without the burden of Dudley's enormous hand-me-downs, he looked like a different child altogether, still thin, but no longer drowning in fabric, his lightning scar standing out starkly against his forehead. Navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion proved challenging. Twice Harry found himself in rooms he was certain hadn't been there before, including a gallery of unsettling portraits whose eyes followed him as he passed and a small chamber containing nothing but a bubbling cauldron tended by unseen hands. Eventually, he detected the smell of cooking and followed it downstairs to the dining room. The Addams family was already assembled around a massive table of dark, polished wood. Gomez sat at the head, reading a newspaper whose headlines seemed to move and change as Harry glanced at them. Morticia occupied the other end, gracefully feeding scraps of raw meat to a carnivorous plant that grew from an ornate pot beside her chair. Wednesday and Pugsley were engaged in what appeared to be a duel using forks as weapons, while Uncle Fester was attempting to light a candelabra by sticking his finger in a nearby electrical socket. "Ah, Harry!" Gomez exclaimed, jumping to his feet the moment Harry entered. "There you are, my boy. Come, sit. Feast. Today is a momentous day, your first full day as an Addams." "Good morning," Harry said shyly, sliding into the empty chair between Wednesday and Pugsley, who immediately ceased their fork duel. "Did you see my fall?" Pugsley asked eagerly. "Next time you should join us." "He needs proper training first, Pugsley," Wednesday admonished, her serious expression unchanged. "Harry hasn't been raised with our advantages." "Quite right," Gomez agreed. "Safety first. No death-defying stunts until Harry's had the basic precautionary lessons. Can't have the boy breaking his neck before he's learned how to mend it." Harry wasn't entirely sure if this was a joke. "Breakfast is served," announced Grandmama, emerging from the kitchen with Lurch behind her, both carrying trays laden with the most unusual assortment of food Harry had ever seen. Some dishes were recognizable, eggs, toast, sausages, while others were completely foreign, a bubbling purple concoction that smelled of licorice, what appeared to be tentacles arranged in an artistic spiral, and a plate of mushrooms that seemed to be softly humming. "A special feast for our newest family member," Grandmama declared, placing a heaping plate before Harry. "Eat up, child. You need your strength for today's lessons." Harry eyed the food cautiously. The eggs looked normal enough, though they had an unusual blue tint. The sausages were an alarming shade of green. Noticing his hesitation, Morticia said gently, "Perhaps something more familiar for Harry this morning, Mother. He can work up to your more creative dishes." "Nonsense," Grandmama objected. "The boy needs proper nourishment. This is my special growth potion breakfast, guaranteed to put meat on those bones and magic in that blood. It's really good," Pugsley assured him through a mouthful of something wriggling. "The eyeballs are my favorite." "Start with the toast," Wednesday suggested pragmatically. "It's only mildly enchanted." Harry tentatively took a bite of the toast, which was dark and grainy but tasted surprisingly normal, if a bit spicier than he was used to. Encouraged, he tried the blue eggs, which had an unusual but not unpleasant herbal flavor. Before long, he found himself enjoying the bizarre breakfast, though he carefully avoided anything that was still moving. "Excellent!" Gomez proclaimed, watching Harry eat with evident satisfaction. "A healthy appetite. Now then, we must discuss your education schedule." He produced an ornate scroll from inside his jacket and unrolled it across the table. "Morticia and I have devised a comprehensive curriculum to prepare you for both the wizarding world and life as an Addams." The scroll contained an elaborate timetable written in flowing script, with subjects that ranged from the somewhat conventional, basic magical theory, Latin and ancient runes, to the decidedly unusual, recreational explosives, communicating with the dead, poison identification by taste. "We'll begin with foundational subjects," Morticia explained, noting Harry's wide-eyed expression. "Magic requires understanding, and understanding requires knowledge." "But what about?" Harry hesitated. "I mean, don't I need a wand?" "All in good time, my boy," Gomez assured him. "Wand magic is just one tradition among many. Before you get to all that swishing and flicking business at Hogwarts, you'll learn the older ways, family magic that predates wands by centuries." "The Addams have always been practitioners of primal magic," Morticia added. "Magic of blood and bone, of shadow and spirit. Wands are a relatively recent invention, and while useful, they can become a crutch if relied upon exclusively." "Most importantly," Wednesday interjected, her dark eyes fixed on Harry, "our magic cannot be tracked or regulated by the Ministry. They only monitor wand usage." Harry was beginning to understand that the Addams family existed in a peculiar gray area within the magical world, connected to it, but separate, following their own ancient traditions rather than conforming to modern wizarding society. "Now," Gomez continued enthusiastically, "after breakfast, we'll start with family history and basic theory in my study. Then Morticia will take you for herbology in her greenhouse. After lunch, Fester has volunteered for your first lesson in defensive explosives, and Wednesday will introduce you to the family familiars. And I'll be preparing your special rejuvenation tonic," Grandmama added. "Those Dursleys have left you dreadfully malnourished. Nothing a few months of my brews won't fix." Harry felt a surge of emotion, gratitude mixed with lingering disbelief that these people had taken him in so completely, rearranging their lives to educate and care for him without hesitation. "Thank you," he said sincerely, looking around at his new family. "For everything. I've never. I mean, no one's ever wanted to teach me before." A moment of silence fell over the normally boisterous family. Morticia and Gomez exchanged a look laden with shared outrage at the treatment Harry had endured. "Harry," Morticia said gently, "you are an Addams now. Your education, your happiness, your very existence is precious to us. Never doubt that." "Here, here," Gomez exclaimed, raising his coffee cup in a toast. "To Harry Potter Addams. May his enemies tremble and his magic flourish." "To Harry," the family echoed, even Lurch's sonorous groan joining the chorus. Gomez's study was a magnificent chaos of contradictions. Ancient tomes shared shelf space with modern financial journals. Tribal masks and medieval weapons adorned walls covered in star charts and family trees. A stuffed two-headed crocodile hung from the ceiling above a perfectly ordinary desk cluttered with papers and curious artifacts. "Welcome to the nerve center," Gomez announced grandly, gesturing for Harry to take a seat in a leather armchair that looked suspiciously like it might once have been used for interrogations. "Where the business of being an Addams is conducted with pride and precision." Harry settled into the chair, which was surprisingly comfortable despite its ominous appearance. "What are we starting with, sir?" "Sir?" Gomez looked momentarily confused before his expression cleared. "Ah. No, no, my boy, it's father, papa, père, fata, or Gomez if you prefer, but never, sir. We're family, not military officers." Harry flushed. "Sorry. Father." The word felt strange on his tongue, but not unpleasant. Gomez beamed. Splendid. Now, to begin, who are the Addams, and how do you fit into our gloriously grim heritage? He pulled a massive leather-bound tome from a nearby shelf, sending a cloud of dust into the air as he dropped it onto the desk with a resounding thud. The Addams Grimoire, he announced reverently. Our family history, dating back over 1,000 years. Normally, you'd have to wait until you were 13 to view it, but given the circumstances, Morticia and I agree you need a proper grounding immediately. He opened the book carefully, revealing pages of parchment covered in handwritten text, illustrations, and what appeared to be bloodstains of varying vintages. The first Addams was Alastor the Odd, a contemporary of Merlin himself, though the two were frequently at odds over what constituted appropriate magic. Alastor believed that all magic was natural and therefore could not be inherently dark or light, a philosophy we maintain to this day. For the next hour, Gomez guided Harry through the Addams family tree, pointing out particularly notable ancestors, their accomplishments, and occasional spectacular demises. The Addamses, it seemed, had fingers in every supernatural pie throughout history, from the Roman catacombs to the Salem witch trials, where Goody Addams had, according to family legend, bewitched her own noose to dance a jig while she hung from it, her last act of defiance. And here, Gomez said eventually, turning to a more recent section, is where your branch connects to ours. Isolde Peveril, sister to Ignotus, married Thaddeus Addams in 1292. Their daughter Morgana married into the Potter line 2 generations later, creating the blood connection that exists between us today. Harry studied the family tree with fascination. But if we're related, why didn't anyone know? Why was I sent to the Dursleys instead? Gomez's normally jovial expression darkened. Politics, my boy. The British wizarding world has become increasingly insular and regulated over the centuries. The Addams family chose to relocate to the Americas in the 1700s precisely because of increasing restrictions on what the ministry deemed acceptable magic. Our connection to the Potters became obscured over time, and by your parents' era, may have been forgotten entirely. He closed the grimoire carefully. As for why Dumbledore placed you with those dreadful muggles instead of seeking magical relatives, that remains a question with troubling implications. Muggles? Harry repeated, unfamiliar with the term. Non-magical folk, Gomez clarified. Like your aunt and uncle. Though most muggles are perfectly splendid people. Your maternal grandparents, for instance, were reportedly quite charming, despite their unfortunate lack of tentacles or extra eyes. This casual reference to tentacles as a desirable feature might have shocked Harry a few days ago, but he was rapidly adjusting to the Addams worldview. Gomez continued, shifting gears with characteristic energy. Now, before we delve into magical theory proper, there's something important you should understand about the nature of magic itself. He leaned forward, suddenly serious. The wizarding world you'll eventually enter categorizes magic as either light or dark, based largely on arbitrary distinctions and political considerations. This is, frankly, nonsense. Magic simply is. Its nature is determined by intent and consequence, not by some inherent moral quality. Like electricity, Harry suggested, remembering a science lesson from school. It's not good or bad, it just depends on how you use it. Gomez's face lit up. Precisely. Excellent analogy, my boy. Uncle Fester, for instance, uses electricity in ways most would find alarming, but he harms no one unwilling and finds great joy in his uniquely conductive condition. He rose and began pacing energetically, warming to his subject. The Addams family practices what many would call dark magic, but we harm none who don't deserve it, break no oaths, and respect the fundamental balance of life and death. We embrace the shadows not because we are evil, Harry, but because we understand that darkness is as natural and necessary as light. Harry considered this carefully. The Dursleys had taught him that anything unusual or freakish was wrong, but their worldview had already been thoroughly discredited in his mind. So, it's not about what magic you do, but why you do it. Intent and consequence, Gomez repeated with a satisfied nod. You grasp it already. Now, let's begin with the fundamental principles of magical energy. For the next 2 hours, Harry received a crash course in magical theory that was surprisingly systematic and academic for someone as seemingly chaotic as Gomez. They covered the basic magical elements: earth, air, fire, water, spirit, the relationship between emotion and magical potency, and the differences between various magical traditions around the world. By the time they finished, Harry's head was swimming with new information, but he felt a deep satisfaction. For the first time in his life, someone was explaining the strange occurrences that had always surrounded him, treating his abilities as gifts to be nurtured rather than abnormalities to be suppressed. Magnificent progress, Gomez declared as they concluded. You've got the Addams aptitude for theory, no doubt about it. Enough for today, though. Morticia awaits in the greenhouse. As they rose to leave, Harry noticed a small silver instrument on Gomez's desk that resembled a spinning top, though it remained motionless. What's that? He asked curiously. Gomez glanced at it. Ah! A detection device, tuned to the magical signature of Albus Dumbledore. When he discovers you've left your relatives, which should be any moment now, this will alert us. We're expecting quite the reaction. Will he try to take me away? Harry asked, a note of anxiety creeping into his voice. Gomez placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He may try, my boy. But he'll find the Addams family is not so easily intimidated. You're one of us now, protected by blood, law, and family magic older than Hogwarts itself. Besides, he added with a wink, Dumbledore may be powerful, but he's never faced Morticia when she's truly angry. Few have lived to tell that tale. Morticia's greenhouse bore little resemblance to any garden Harry had seen before. Instead of flowers and vegetables, the vast glass structure housed plants that seemed to have emerged from the darkest fairy tales, towering specimens with fanged blossoms, vines that reached for passers-by with unsettling intelligence, and flowers that whispered in languages no human throat could produce. Welcome to my sanctuary, Harry, Morticia said, her pale hands caressing the tendrils of a plant that shuddered with apparent pleasure at her touch. Here you'll learn the secret language of plants and the ancient art of botanical magic. She guided him through narrow paths between the strange flora, naming each species and its properties. The African strangler, whose vines could immobilize prey in seconds. The deadly nightshade, whose berries could kill or cure depending on how they were prepared. The rare whispering orchid, which could communicate with the dead when properly cultivated. Plants were mankind's first magical tools, Morticia explained as they reached a workbench laden with gardening implements that resembled surgical tools. Before wands, before spells as you understand them, there were the gifts of the earth. Even now, many magical solutions begin with a properly prepared herb or root. She selected a pair of silver pruning shears and handed them to Harry. Today, we'll start with harvesting. The clippings will be used in Grandmama's potions for your health regimen. Under Morticia's patient guidance, Harry learned to harvest various plants, how to approach the more temperamental specimens, the correct phases of the moon for optimal potency, and the importance of expressing gratitude to the plant for its sacrifice. Living things respond to respect, she told him as he carefully collected thorns from a plant whose blooms resembled human hearts. Magic is an exchange, never simply taking. Remember that, and even the most dangerous specimens will yield their treasures to you. Harry found himself unexpectedly enthralled. There was something soothing about working with the plants, even those that occasionally tried to bite him. Morticia was a gifted teacher, her normally reserved demeanor warming as she shared her passion for her unusual garden. You have a gentle touch, she observed as Harry successfully harvested venom from a particularly aggressive flowering trap without triggering its snapping mechanism. Like your mother, according to the accounts we've read. Lily Potter was said to have had an exceptional gift for potion-making and herbology. Harry froze, the precious vial of venom clutched carefully in his fingers. You've read about my mother? Morticia nodded, her expression softening further. After the goblins contacted us, we gathered every scrap of information available about your parents. It wasn't much, the wizarding world's record-keeping is haphazard at best, but enough to know they were exceptional people who loved you very much. She reached into the folds of her dress and produced a small, leather-bound book. This is for you. We've compiled what we learned about James and Lily Potter. It's not comprehensive, but it's a beginning. Later, we can seek out those who knew them personally. Harry accepted the book with trembling hands. In 5 years with the Dursleys, he'd never been told anything about his parents except lies. Now, in just his second day with the Addamses, he held concrete information about the people who had given him life. "Thank you," he whispered, clutching the book to his chest. Morticia simply inclined her head, understanding without words what this meant to him. After a moment of respectful silence, she continued, "Now, let me show you the Venus mantraps. They're particularly finicky about being fed." By the time they finished in the greenhouse, Harry had a new appreciation for the subtle power of plants and a collection of carefully harvested ingredients that Morticia assured him would be instrumental in his upcoming potion lessons with Grandmama. Lunch was a slightly less exotic affair than breakfast, though the soup still changed colors periodically and Harry was fairly certain the sandwiches made quiet moaning sounds when bitten into. He was growing accustomed to the Addams cuisine, however, and found himself enjoying the unusual flavors. "How goes the education, old man?" Uncle Fester asked Gomez, his pallid face alight with curiosity. "Swimmingly," Gomez declared. "The boy's a natural. Grasped magical theory faster than a Mongolian death worm grasps its prey." "Herbology showed similar promise," Morticia added. "Harry has an intuitive connection with even our most challenging specimens." Harry flushed at the praise, still unused to receiving positive attention for his abilities. "Excellent." Fester rubbed his hands together gleefully. "That means we can move straight to the advanced explosives this afternoon." "Perhaps basic safety principles first, Uncle Fester," Morticia suggested diplomatically. "Harry's still adjusting." Fester looked momentarily disappointed before brightening again. "Safety first. Of course. I'll just demonstrate the medium-grade detonations instead of the village levelers." "I want to watch," Pugsley said eagerly. "Me too," Wednesday added with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. "Especially if there's a risk of shrapnel." After lunch, the children and Fester made their way to what appeared to be a reinforced bunker at the edge of the property. Inside, worktables were laden with an alarming array of chemicals, fuses, metals, and mysterious powders. "Welcome to the boom room," Fester announced proudly. "Where the Addams family has been creating controlled chaos for generations." Harry eyed the various bubbling beakers and ominous-looking contraptions with trepidation. "Is this legal?" "Technically. No," Fester replied cheerfully. "But the local authorities gave up trying to enforce regulations after the incident of '87. Besides, we only use our knowledge for defense, entertainment, and occasional property remodeling." For the next hour, Harry received a crash course in what Fester called the percussive arts. He learned about different explosive compounds, proper safety measures, which Fester followed with surprising rigor, and the magical properties of various reactions. "Combustion is one of the purest forms of transformative magic," Fester explained as he carefully measured a glittering powder into a small metal container. "Instant change, raw power, beautiful chaos, all in the blink of an eye." Despite his initial nervousness, Harry found himself fascinated. There was something captivating about the precision required, the careful calculations, and the thrilling results. It was, in its own way, not unlike cooking, if cooking occasionally resulted in controlled fireballs and miniature mushroom clouds. The key, Fester emphasized repeatedly, is intention and containment. An explosion without purpose is just a mess. An explosion with purpose is art. By the end of the lesson, Harry had successfully created his first Addams special, a small, relatively safe explosive that produced brilliant green flames and a shower of harmless sparks. The pride on Fester's face as the device performed perfectly matched the satisfaction Harry felt at mastering this unusual skill. "Natural talent," Fester declared, clapping Harry on the back. We'll make a proper demolitions expert of you yet. Wednesday, who had been observing with clinical interest, nodded approvingly. Not bad for a first attempt. Next time, we should add powdered erumpent horn for extra impact. All in good time, Wednesday, Fester said. Now, I believe it's your turn to introduce Harry to the family familiars. Wednesday's normally impassive face showed a flicker of anticipation. Yes. They've been quite eager to meet him. The Addams family menagerie proved to be as unconventional as everything else about his new home. Located in a converted carriage house behind the main mansion, the space had been magically expanded to house an impressive collection of creatures both magical and mundane, though mundane took on a different meaning in the Addams context. This is Homer, Wednesday said, introducing Harry to a two-headed tortoise that appeared to be at least a century old. He's been with the family since great-grandfather Addams brought him back from the Galapagos. The right head speaks Latin, the left Greek. Salve, croaked the right head, eyeing Harry with ancient wisdom. Chi Alpha Rho Epsilon, added the left. I don't speak either, Harry admitted apologetically. You will, Wednesday stated with certainty. Father's curriculum includes both by the end of the year. They moved on to other inhabitants, a colony of bats that Wednesday had trained to form letters and simple words when they flew in formation, a trio of ravens that could recite Edgar Allan Poe from memory, several snakes of varying sizes and colors, and a collection of spiders ranging from tiny jewel-toned specimens to one particularly massive arachnid that Wednesday introduced as Aristotle, and handled with obvious affection. Most of these are my personal companions, Wednesday explained as the giant spider delicately crawled up her arm to rest on her shoulder. Pugsley prefers creatures that explode, melt, or otherwise self-destruct, which makes long-term relationships difficult. Harry was particularly drawn to the snakes, finding their movements hypnotic and their sleepy gazes somehow familiar. They like you, Wednesday observed as a beautiful emerald serpent raised its head to study Harry more closely. He's beautiful, Harry said, carefully extending his hand toward the snake's enclosure. What's his name? Cleopatra, Wednesday corrected. And yes, she is exquisite. An emerald tree boa from the Amazon. Magical, of course, most Addams pets are. As if understanding the introduction, the snake slithered closer to Harry's hand, tongue flicking out to taste his scent. Hello, Cleopatra, Harry said softly. It's nice to meet you. To his astonishment, the snake seemed to nod in acknowledgement, and Harry could have sworn he heard a faint, feminine voice reply, a speaker. Interesting. Harry jerked back in surprise. Did she just talk? Wednesday's eyes widened fractionally, a significant display of shock by her standards. You heard her speak. In words you understood? Yes, Harry confirmed, confused by her reaction. Didn't you? No, Wednesday said slowly. I hear only hissing. Harry, you're a Parselmouth, a snake speaker. It's an extremely rare magical gift. Is that bad? Harry asked, noting her intense scrutiny. Not to an Addams, she replied. But in the wider wizarding world, it's often associated with dark magic. Salazar Slytherin was a famous Parselmouth, as was the dark wizard who killed your parents. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. You mean I have something in common with the person who murdered my family? Having the same rare talent doesn't make you anything like him, Wednesday said with unexpected gentleness. The ability to speak to snakes is a gift, nothing more. How you use it defines its nature. She paused, then added, besides, it's obviously a family trait. Several Addamses through history have been Parselmouths. It likely comes from our Peveril connection. Reassured, Harry turned back to Cleopatra. Can you understand everything I say? He asked the snake. Yes, came the sibilant reply. You speak the ancient tongue. Rare among two legs. This is amazing, Harry breathed, delighted by this newfound ability. It could be very useful, Wednesday observed pragmatically. Snakes see and hear things others don't notice. And they're excellent at delivering undetected messages. She studied Harry with new interest. We should tell father and mother immediately. They'll want to help you develop this gift properly. As they left the menagerie, Harry found himself smiling. Yesterday, he had been punished for accidentally turning his teacher's wig blue. Today, discovering he could talk to snakes was considered a valuable talent to be nurtured. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The revelation of Harry's Parseltongue ability caused quite a stir at dinner that evening. Magnificent! Gomez exclaimed, slapping the table with enthusiasm. A true gift of the old magic. Why, Great Aunt Slytherin would be positively green with envy, and considering her natural complexion, that's saying something. It confirms the strength of his bloodline, Morticia observed, looking pleased. Parseltongue often skips generations before manifesting again. Can we get Harry more snakes to talk to? Pugsley asked eagerly. Maybe a basilisk. Let's start with something less lethal, dear, Morticia suggested. Perhaps a nice runespore for his birthday. The Parselmouth ability will need to be handled carefully when Harry enters wider wizarding society, Grandmama pointed out, passing Harry a third helping of what she called strengthening stew, a concoction whose primary ingredients he had decided not to question. British wizards are notoriously superstitious about such gifts. Bah! Gomez waved a dismissive hand. Let them prattle with their prejudices. And Addams never hides his talents. We celebrate them. Refine them. Occasionally exploit them for humorous effect at social gatherings. Nevertheless, Morticia said thoughtfully, it would be prudent to ensure Harry can control when and how he displays this ability. Surprise is always more effective than transparency when dealing with potential adversaries. Harry, who had been following the conversation with fascination, found himself once again struck by the Addams approach to the unusual, not fear or denial, but strategic appreciation and practical application. Could I learn to control it? To speak Parseltongue deliberately instead of accidentally? Of course, Morticia assured him. Like any magical talent, it can be refined with practice. We'll add it to your curriculum immediately. As dinner concluded, Lurch approached Gomez and handed him a small silver device, the same spinning top Harry had noticed in the study earlier. It was now whirring rapidly, emitting faint pulses of blue light. Ah! Gomez examined it with interest. Right on schedule. It seems Headmaster Dumbledore has discovered your absence, Harry. The monitoring charms have been activated. What happens now? Harry asked, suddenly anxious. Now, Gomez said with a gleam in his eye, we prepare to receive a most distinguished visitor. Lurch. Break out the good tea set, the one with the mild hallucinogenic properties. And perhaps air out the drawing room of despair, we want to make a proper impression. The anticipated confrontation with Dumbledore, however, did not materialize that evening. Instead, as the family gathered in what Gomez had dubbed the strategically advantageous receiving parlor, a different sort of magic made itself known. Letter for young Master Potter Addams, announced Thing, scuttling into the room with an envelope clutched in his disembodied fingers. Curious, Morticia murmured, examining the heavy parchment envelope with its distinctive green ink address, Mr. H. Potter Addams, the East Tower Bedroom, Addams Mansion, Cemetery Ridge, Westfield, New Jersey. That was fast, Gomez observed. The British wizarding postal system isn't known for its efficiency. Someone's been keeping very close tabs on the boy. Harry accepted the envelope from Thing with a murmured thanks and broke the purple wax seal bearing an ornate letter H surrounded by 4 animals. Inside was a letter written in the same emerald green ink, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeet, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we have been made aware of your change in residence and guardianship. While unexpected, the ancient magic of Hogwarts has acknowledged this transition and updated our records accordingly. As you are still several years from enrollment at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, this letter serves merely as confirmation that your place remains secure for September 1991, when you reach 11 years of age. In the meantime, I would appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and your new guardians to discuss matters pertaining to your parents' legacies and your future education. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Interesting, Wednesday commented, reading over Harry's shoulder. Not from Dumbledore himself. McGonagall, Gomez mused, stroking his mustache thoughtfully. The Transfiguration Professor. Scottish. Animagus. Reputation for fairness, despite her loyalty to Dumbledore. I know her, Grandmama added unexpectedly. Met her during that unpleasantness with Grindelwald back in 44. Formidable witch, even then. Makes a mean whiskey sour. Morticia took the letter, examining it carefully. No tracking charms, no compulsions. A straightforward communication. Well, Harry. Gomez turned to him. It's addressed to you, after all. What do you think we should do? Harry was momentarily taken aback by being asked his opinion. The Dursleys had never consulted him on anything, treating his thoughts and feelings as irrelevant annoyances. I think we should meet with her, he decided after a moment's consideration. If she knew my parents, she might tell me more about them. And wouldn't it be better to talk now, rather than wait for them to try something else? Gomez beamed with pride. Excellent reasoning, my boy. Diplomatic yet strategic. A true Addams approach. Very well, Morticia agreed. We shall invite Professor McGonagall for tea tomorrow. Formal but not ostentatious. We want to present ourselves as Harry's loving family, not intimidate her, excessively. I'll prepare my special Scottish shortbread, Grandmama offered. The recipe that made 5 clan chiefs propose marriage and 2 declare blood feuds. Splendid! Gomez exclaimed. Lurch, fetch parchment and ink. Harry shall compose his first official correspondence as a Potter Addams. Under the family's guidance, Harry wrote a polite response inviting Professor McGonagall to tea the following afternoon. Thing took the sealed letter and disappeared to dispatch it via the owl Gomez kept for occasional communications with the wizarding world. Now, Gomez said as they concluded their preparations, let's continue your education. The evening hours are perfect for introducing you to the basics of shadow walking, an Addams specialty. The next morning found Harry in Grandmama's domain, a kitchen that resembled an alchemist's laboratory more than a cooking space. Cauldrons of various sizes bubbled over magical flames that changed color depending on what was being brewed. Bundles of herbs and other, less identifiable substances hung from the ceiling. Glass jars containing everything from ordinary spices to what appeared to be preserved organs lined the shelves. Magic begins in the belly, Grandmama declared, tying an apron around Harry's waist. Potions are just cooking with intent, and cooking is just potions with flavor. For the next 2 hours, Harry received a crash course in potion-making that bore little resemblance to any cookbook he'd ever seen. Grandmama's approach was intuitive rather than precise, a pinch of this, a dash of that, all determined by smell, color, and occasionally by consulting various bones she would toss onto the countertop. Never mind those fusspot instructions in books, she advised as Harry carefully stirred a cauldron of something that smelled like cinnamon and seawater. Real potion-making is about feeling the magic, letting the ingredients speak to you. Despite the seemingly haphazard methodology, Harry found he had a knack for potions. His experience cooking for the Dursleys had given him good instincts for heat and timing, and there was something satisfying about watching raw ingredients transform into something greater than their parts. Good, good. Grandmama praised as Harry's first attempt at a minor healing potion turned the exact shade of sunset orange she had described. You've got your mother's touch. Lily Potter was said to be a potion prodigy, you know. Could have been a potions mistress if she hadn't been cut down so young. She bottled the completed potion with surprising deftness for her gnarled hands. This will be part of your daily regimen. 3 drops in your morning juice for the next month. Heal those Dursley years right up. As they cleaned up, Grandmama fixed Harry with a penetrating gaze. You know, child, family isn't always about blood, though we Addamses do love our blood rituals. It's about who claims you, who stands by you. Your parents would be pleased, I think, to see you with us. Did you know them? Harry asked hopefully. No, dear, not personally. But I know magic, and I know love, and both leave traces that linger long after people are gone. She patted his cheek with a weathered hand. The love in your parents' protection spell still clings to you like perfume. Only the most powerful love magic leaves such an imprint. Before Harry could ask more about this intriguing observation, Pugsley burst into the kitchen, his round face flushed with excitement. Harry! Come quick! Wednesday and I found a secret passage that leads to the old crypt, and there's something moving inside one of the coffins. Grandmama chuckled. Off you go, then. Discovery awaits. Just be back and presentable by 2 o'clock for your meeting with the professor. Harry didn't need to be told twice. The prospect of exploring secret passages with his new siblings was irresistible. He quickly hung up his apron and followed Pugsley, who was already chattering about which weapons they should bring for protection or possible dissection purposes. The morning passed in a blur of exploration. The secret passage, accessed by pulling a specific book in the library, led to a network of tunnels beneath the mansion and eventually to an ancient family crypt that predated the house itself. Wednesday had indeed found movement in one of the stone sarcophagi, though it turned out to be a colony of rare luminescent beetles rather than a restless ancestor. Disappointing, she remarked, collecting several specimens in a small jar. I was hoping for at least a partial revenant. These will make excellent potion ingredients, though. By the time they emerged, dusty but triumphant, it was nearly time for Professor McGonagall's visit. The children quickly cleaned up, Harry changing into one of the more formal outfits from his new wardrobe, a dark green velvet jacket over a crisp white shirt and black trousers that Morticia had assured him brought out the killing curse green of his eyes most effectively. At precisely 2 o'clock, the mansion's doorbell rang, a sonorous gonging that echoed through the entire structure. Harry, waiting nervously in the formal parlor with Gomez and Morticia, felt his stomach tighten with anticipation. This would be his first encounter with someone from his parents' world, someone who had known them personally. Chin up, my boy, Gomez encouraged, straightening Harry's collar. Remember, you're a Potter Addams now. You meet the wizarding world on your terms, not theirs. Lurch's distinctive heavy footsteps approached the parlor, followed by lighter ones. The door swung open to reveal a tall, severe-looking woman in emerald green robes. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and square spectacles perched on her nose, through which she surveyed the room with sharp, assessing eyes. Those eyes widened slightly as they fell on Harry, a flicker of emotion, pain, surprise, recognition, crossing her features before her composure returned. Professor McGonagall, Morticia greeted, rising gracefully. How kind of you to accept our invitation. I am Morticia Addams, and this is my husband, Gomez. Enchanted. Gomez declared, bounding forward to shake the professor's hand vigorously. Absolutely enchanted. We've heard marvelous things about Hogwarts, founded by madmen and visionaries, built on ancient magical ground, periodically besieged by dark forces. Sounds like home. If McGonagall was taken aback by this enthusiastic description of her school, she didn't show it. Mr. and Mrs. Addams, she acknowledged with a slight Scottish burr. Thank you for your hospitality. Her gaze returned to Harry. And Mr. Potter. It's been some time since I've seen you. You've met before? Harry asked eagerly. Indeed, though you were far too young to remember. I was acquainted with your parents. A shadow passed across her face. In fact, I was the one who delivered you to your aunt and uncle's home after their deaths. An awkward silence followed this statement, broken by Morticia's smooth intervention. Please, Professor, do sit down. Lurch has prepared tea. As if summoned by her words, the butler appeared with a laden tea tray, setting it on the low table between the sofas before retreating with a sonorous MMRR that might have been, enjoy, or possibly, beware. McGonagall took the offered seat, her posture remaining rigidly proper. I must admit, she began, accepting a cup of tea from Morticia, this situation is highly unusual. When the Hogwarts register updated itself to show Harry's change of address and guardianship, it caused quite a stir. I imagine it did, Gomez replied cheerfully. Nothing like a good bureaucratic upheaval to keep the ministry on its toes. Albus, that is, Headmaster Dumbledore, was particularly concerned, McGonagall continued, studying Harry over the rim of her teacup. There were significant protective measures in place at your relative's home. You mean the blood wards? Harry asked, surprising her with his knowledge. Gringotts explained about those. But they said the Addams's blood connection to me was stronger. McGonagall's eyebrows rose. Gringotts facilitated this guardianship transfer. Indeed, Morticia confirmed. The goblins discovered Harry's condition during a routine audit of dormant accounts. The Potter-Addams connection through the Peveril line gave us standing to claim guardianship, particularly given evidence of the boy's mistreatment. McGonagall's lips thinned dangerously. Mistreatment? Albus assured us you were being well cared for, Mr. Potter. Harry shifted uncomfortably, still unused to discussing the Dursleys' neglect. I wasn't, he said simply. They hated magic. Hated me for having it. They kept him in a cupboard, Minerva, Gomez added, his usual exuberance dampened by rare solemnity. Starved him. Treated him like a servant rather than a child. McGonagall's face paled, then flushed with anger. I warned him, she muttered, almost to herself. I told Albus those were the worst sort of muggles imaginable. She set her teacup down with a sharp clink and addressed Harry directly. Mr. Potter, Harry, I owe you an apology. I was there that night. I observed the Dursley family before your placement and expressed my concerns, but deferred to the headmaster's judgment. It seems my initial assessment was correct, and I deeply regret not insisting more strongly against leaving you there. Harry, touched by her evident remorse, found himself warming to the stern professor. It's all right, he assured her. I'm with the Addamses now. They've been brilliant. McGonagall's gaze swept over the admittedly unusual surroundings, the mounted swordfish wearing a fez, the grandfather clock whose pendulum was a swinging battle-axe, the potted plant in the corner that was quietly digesting what appeared to be a small rodent, before returning to study the Addams couple themselves. Yes, well, she said diplomatically, every family has its own character. We prefer gloriously macabre charm, Gomez suggested with a grin. A hint of a smile tugged at McGonagall's lips despite her obvious effort to maintain her severe demeanor. Indeed. She turned back to Harry. The headmaster wished to attend this meeting himself, but I suggested a more gradual introduction might be appropriate. He is, however, very interested in speaking with you and your new guardians at your earliest convenience. And we look forward to meeting the illustrious Albus Dumbledore, Morticia replied smoothly. Perhaps next week, after Harry has had more time to settle in. We're in the midst of an intensive educational program to help him understand his heritage, both Potter and Addams. McGonagall nodded. A reasonable suggestion. I shall convey it to the headmaster. She hesitated, then added, May I ask what this educational program entails? As deputy headmistress of Hogwarts, I have a professional interest in our future students' preparation. Of course, Gomez said enthusiastically. Standard curriculum, really, magical theory, potions, herbology, ancient languages, family history, defensive explosives, basic necromancy, advanced poisons and their antidotes. McGonagall's eyebrows climbed higher with each subject mentioned. I see, she managed. And this is standard for Addams' children? With individual adaptations based on personal interests and talents, Morticia confirmed. We've discovered, for instance, that Harry has a particular gift for Parseltongue, which we're helping him develop. This revelation caused McGonagall to nearly choke on her tea. Parseltongue, she repeated once she'd recovered. That's extremely rare. And extremely useful, Wednesday added, entering the room silently with Pugsley close behind. Harry can already communicate with Cleopatra, and we're working on more complex conversations. McGonagall studied the Addams children with the practiced eye of a teacher who had seen everything from mundane mischief to magical mayhem. You must be Wednesday and Pugsley, she guessed accurately. Mr. Potter wrote that he's quite enjoying having siblings for the first time. Wednesday nodded solemnly. Harry is adapting well to our family dynamics. His pain tolerance is still underdeveloped, but his magical instincts are excellent. Pain tolerance? McGonagall repeated faintly. For recreational activities, Pugsley explained helpfully. Like when I tested my new junior guillotine on him yesterday. It malfunctioned, Wednesday added. The blade stopped half an inch above his neck. Most disappointing. McGonagall looked alarmed until she noticed Harry's poorly concealed grin. They're joking, Professor, he assured her. Mostly. The blade was dull anyway, Pugsley admitted with a sigh. Would have just given him a nasty bruise. McGonagall seemed to be reassessing her initial impressions. After a moment, she turned to Morticia and Gomez. The Addams family practices unconventional magic, from what I understand. Old ways that predate the International Statute of Secrecy. We prefer to think of it as comprehensively eclectic, Morticia replied. Our traditions draw from many sources, European, African, Native American, Asian. Magic is magic, after all, regardless of its cultural trappings. And we follow one simple rule, Gomez added. Harm none who harm none. Beyond that, all magic is fair game. I see, McGonagall said again, though she sounded less certain this time. And what are your intentions regarding Harry's future? Hogwarts is, of course, expecting him when he turns 11. And he shall attend, Morticia assured her. James and Lily Potter would have wanted their son to walk the halls they once did. We honor that legacy. However, her voice took on a subtle but unmistakable edge. Harry will arrive at Hogwarts as a Potter Addams, fully aware of both sides of his heritage and prepared to navigate the wizarding world on his own terms. McGonagall studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. That seems reasonable. Though I should warn you that certain elements of the British wizarding community may find the Addams approach to magic somewhat challenging. Excellent! Gomez exclaimed. Nothing hones the mind like a good challenge. Why, when I was a boy, Great Aunt Hecuba used to challenge me to duels every Sunday after lunch. Marvelous training, I learned to dodge curses before I could properly tie my own shoelaces. Something that might have been amusement flickered in McGonagall's eyes. I can see that Harry's education is being taken seriously, if not quite in the manner Hogwarts might prescribe. Professor, Harry said, gathering his courage, would you tell me about my parents? What they were like at school. The Dursleys never told me anything true about them. McGonagall's stern facade softened noticeably. Of course, Mr. Potter. Your father, James, was one of the most talented Transfiguration students I ever taught, though also one of the most mischievous. And your mother, Lily, was brilliantly clever and fiercely kind. Both were Gryffindors, my house at Hogwarts, and both became prefects in their 5th year. For the next hour, the planned formal tea transformed into something far more meaningful as McGonagall shared stories of James and Lily Potter's school years. Harry listened, enraptured, as she described his father's prowess on the Quidditch pitch, his mother's gift for charms, their initial rivalry that eventually blossomed into romance. Even the Addams children sat quietly, recognizing the importance of these moments to their new brother. Wednesday occasionally asked surprisingly insightful questions about magical theory when McGonagall mentioned spells Lily had mastered, while Pugsley was particularly interested in the marauding activities of James and his friends. By the time McGonagall rose to leave, the atmosphere had transformed completely. The initial tension had given way to something approaching mutual respect, the professor clearly reassessing her preconceptions about the Addams family, and the Addamses appreciating her straightforward nature and evident care for Harry's well-being. "I shall inform the headmaster of our productive meeting," she said as she prepared to depart. "And suggest that his own visit be scheduled for next Friday, if that suits your family calendar." "Perfectly," Gomez confirmed. "We've only got a minor summoning ritual on Thursday, and the full moon gathering on Saturday. Friday is completely open." If McGonagall was disturbed by this schedule, she hid it well. "Very good. And Mr. Potter," she added, turning to Harry, "I've brought something for you." From within her robes, she produced a small leather-bound album. "Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper who was fond of your parents, has been collecting these photographs of James and Lily. He intended to give them to you when you came to Hogwarts, but under the circumstances, I thought you might appreciate them now." Harry accepted the album with trembling hands, opening it to see his parents' faces smiling and waving at him from magical photographs. His mother's eyes, so like his own, sparkled with life and intelligence, while his father's grin and the arm he had wrapped around Lily spoke of confidence and deep affection. "Thank you," he whispered, unable to find words adequate for what this gift meant to him. McGonagall simply nodded, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. "Until next week, then," she said, inclining her head to the Addams parents. After Lurch had escorted her out, Harry remained transfixed by the album, turning pages slowly and drinking in every detail of the parents he couldn't remember. "They look happy," Wednesday observed, peering over his shoulder. "They do," Harry agreed softly. "And formidable," she added approvingly. "Your mother has the eyes of someone who could curse effectively if provoked." Coming from Wednesday, this was high praise indeed. "A successful encounter, I think," Morticia remarked to Gomez as they watched the children examining the photographs together. "Indeed," Gomez agreed. "The professor is sharper than her employer, I'd wager. Saw through his machinations with those dreadful Dursleys right from the start." "An ally, perhaps," Morticia mused. "When Dumbledore himself arrives, he may find his usual manipulations less effective than anticipated." "Let him come," Gomez declared with characteristic bravado. "The Addams family has faced down inquisitors, witch hunters, and tax auditors. One meddling headmaster hardly seems cause for concern." Morticia's smile was subtle but knowing. "Of course, dear. Though perhaps we should ensure the more temperamental artifacts are secured before his visit. First impressions, after all." "Spoilsport," Gomez teased, but his eyes shone with appreciation for his wife's tactical thinking. "Very well. The strangling curtains can take a day off. But I insist we leave out Uncle Knick-Knack's collection of cursed music boxes. Educational value." Harry, overhearing this exchange, felt a surge of gratitude for his new family's protective instincts. The Addamses might be unusual by any standard, but their dedication to him was absolute and unquestioning. For the first time in his life, he had adults who were genuinely on his side, ready to defend his interests against anyone, even the powerful wizard who had placed him with the Dursleys. With that comforting thought, he turned back to the photo album, to the smiling faces of the parents he was only now beginning to know. The days leading up to Dumbledore's anticipated visit passed in a whirlwind of education and exploration. Harry's schedule was packed from morning until night with lessons covering everything from basic wand movements, practiced with a training wand carved from you that couldn't actually cast spells, to the intricacies of Addams family history. Gomez taught him fencing in the mornings, insisting that proper wizards should be as adept with a blade as with a wand. "Magic can fail, my boy," he would declare, lunging enthusiastically while Harry attempted to parry. "But cold steel rarely disappoints." Morticia continued his herbology education, introducing him to increasingly exotic specimens in her greenhouse. Under her patient guidance, Harry learned to identify, harvest, and utilize dozens of magical plants, from the relatively benign whistling wolfsbane to the decidedly dangerous strangling ivy. Grandmama's potion lessons grew more complex, incorporating the herbs Harry gathered with Morticia along with ingredients that he preferred not to identify too closely. The results were impressive, however. After just a week of her rejuvenation regimen, Harry had gained weight, grown nearly an inch, and found his once perpetual fatigue replaced by boundless energy. "Good blood will tell," Grandmama declared proudly as she measured him against a notched doorframe. "You'll be as tall as your father yet, mark my words." Uncle Fester took charge of what he called practical defensive magic, which seemed to consist primarily of creating increasingly elaborate explosive devices and teaching Harry how to use them as distractions, deterrents, or simply for celebratory purposes. "Never underestimate the value of a good bang," Fester advised sagely. "Wizards expect spells, they don't expect black powder and magnesium." Even Lurch contributed to Harry's education, teaching him to play the harpsichord with surprising patience for someone whose primary mode of communication was grunting. Harry discovered he had a natural ear for music, though his small hands struggled with the more complex chord progressions. The most meaningful lessons, however, came from Wednesday and Pugsley, who took their roles as siblings with utmost seriousness. They introduced Harry to the mansion's many secrets, hidden passages, concealed rooms, and the unwritten rules of Addams family life. "Never open the third drawer in the hallway cabinet," Wednesday instructed as they explored the house's east wing. "Something lives in there. Something ancient. And don't go into the swamp at night unless you're wearing the special boots," Pugsley added. "The quicksand moves after dark." They taught him Addams family games like Wake the Dead, played in the family graveyard with various noise-making devices, and Seance, which occasionally resulted in actual spiritual manifestations. They showed him how to navigate the mansion's shifting architecture, which had a tendency to rearrange itself during thunderstorms. Most importantly, they accepted him completely, never treating him as an outsider or interloper. To Wednesday and Pugsley, Harry was simply their brother now, included in everything from their morning experiments to their evening expeditions through the grounds. By Friday morning, when the family gathered to prepare for Dumbledore's imminent arrival, Harry felt more at home than he had ever felt in his life. The Addams mansion, with all its peculiarities and occasional dangers, had become his sanctuary. The family, with their macabre interests and unconventional ways, had become his people. "Now remember," Morticia reminded everyone over breakfast, "Headmaster Dumbledore is a powerful and influential wizard. We must be courteous but firm in establishing our position as Harry's rightful guardians. And under no circumstances look directly into his eyes for extended periods," Gomez added, unusually serious. "The man is a master legilimens, a mind reader, Harry." "He can read minds?" Harry asked, alarmed. "Only with eye contact," Wednesday clarified. "And only surface thoughts unless you're particularly vulnerable. Grandmama has prepared a protective potion for you. Just a drop in each eye," Grandmama said, passing Harry a tiny crystal vial containing a silvery liquid. "Won't stop a determined intrusion, but it'll blur your thoughts enough to make casual reading difficult." Harry carefully applied the potion as instructed, feeling a brief cool sensation as it took effect. "Is mind reading common in the wizarding world?" "Not common, but not precisely rare either," Morticia explained. "Particularly among those in positions of power. It's considered impolite at best and illegal at worst to use without consent, but enforcement is challenging. The Addams family has always valued mental privacy," Gomez added. "Great-grandfather Horatius developed several techniques for shielding the mind after an unfortunate incident involving a psychic, 3 Russian counts, and a missing elephant. I'll teach you the basics next week." As breakfast concluded, the family dispersed to make final preparations for their distinguished guest. Harry retreated to his room to change into formal attire, another of his miniature Gomez-style suits, complete with a small pocket watch that thing had given him as a "becoming a brother" present. At precisely 2 o'clock, the mansion's doorbell rang, its deep gong echoing through the house. Harry made his way downstairs to the formal receiving parlor where the family had gathered, feeling a curious mixture of nervousness and determination. This was, after all, the man who had left him with the Dursleys, who had, knowingly or not, consigned him to 5 years of neglect and unhappiness. Lurch's heavy footsteps approached, and the parlor door swung open to reveal their visitor. Albus Dumbledore was exactly as Harry had imagined a powerful wizard might look, tall and imposing, with a long silver beard, half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose, and robes of deep purple adorned with silver stars that actually twinkled in the light. His blue eyes, sharp and assessing behind those spectacles, moved immediately to Harry's face. "Harry, my boy," he said, his voice gentle but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "How wonderful to see you again after all these years." "Headmaster Dumbledore," Harry replied with carefully practiced formality. "Welcome to Addams' mansion." "Indeed, welcome," Gomez exclaimed, bounding forward with characteristic energy. "Albus Dumbledore himself. Supreme Mugwump, Chief Warlock, Collector of Chocolate Frog Cards, in our humble abode. A momentous occasion." If Dumbledore was taken aback by Gomez's effusive greeting, he hid it well. "Mr. Addams," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "Mrs. Addams. Thank you for receiving me." "Our pleasure," Morticia replied smoothly, extending a pale hand which Dumbledore kissed with old-world courtesy. "We've been looking forward to meeting you. Harry's future headmaster should certainly be acquainted with his family." A flicker of something, disappointment, concern, crossed Dumbledore's features at the word family, but his benevolent smile never wavered. "Indeed. And what a remarkable home you have. I've heard tales of the Addams family residence, but they hardly do it justice." "We've had it for generations," Gomez said proudly. "Built on an ancient burial ground, expanded by each new generation. The East Wing was constructed entirely by great-grandfather Eustace after that awkward business with the Hungarian werewolves, needed somewhere to house them during full moons, you understand." "Fascinating," Dumbledore murmured, his gaze roaming the room before settling once more on Harry. "And you, my boy? You appear to be in good health. Your sudden relocation caused quite a stir, I must say." "I'm very happy here, sir," Harry said firmly. "I'm delighted to hear it," Dumbledore replied, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "Though I must express my concern about the manner of your removal from your aunt and uncle's home. The protective measures in place there were significant." "Blood wards, yes," Morticia interjected smoothly. "Effective, but ultimately secondary to the protections of true kinship. The goblins were quite clear on that point." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "Ah, yes. Gringotts. Professor McGonagall mentioned their involvement in this unorthodox guardianship transfer. I must admit, I was unaware of any blood connection between the Potter and Addams lines. Many records were lost during Grindelwald's rise," Gomez observed. "The connection is distant but genuine, through the Peveril line. The inheritance test confirmed it beyond doubt. And uncovered certain anomalies," Morticia added, her dark eyes fixed on Dumbledore. "Such as the soul fragment that was lodged in Harry's scar. Most curious, wouldn't you agree?" For the first time, Dumbledore's composure faltered visibly. "Soul fragment," he repeated, his genial mask slipping to reveal genuine alarm. "You're certain?" "The goblins identified and removed it during the inheritance ritual," Gomez confirmed. "Nasty business. Piece of the dark wizard who killed Harry's parents, apparently. Left behind when the killing curse rebounded." Dumbledore sank into the nearest chair without waiting for an invitation, his face suddenly lined with what looked like a mixture of shock and calculation. "I had suspected something unusual about the connection," he admitted. "But not this. Not a true Horcrux." "Horcrux," Wednesday repeated, speaking for the first time from her position near the fireplace. "Soul vessel. Created through murder and specific rituals. Very dark magic." Her tone suggested academic interest rather than moral judgment. Dumbledore's sharp gaze flicked to her. "You are remarkably well informed for one so young, Miss Addams." Wednesday stared back unblinkingly. The Addams library is comprehensive. And Grandmama's grimoires cover many subjects conventional magic users consider taboo. I see. Dumbledore returned his attention to the adult Addamses. This changes matters considerably. If what you say is true, it is, Morticia interrupted with quiet certainty. The ritual was witnessed by Director Ragnarok himself. The soul fragment was extracted and destroyed. Then Harry has been freed from a burden I feared he might have to bear much longer, Dumbledore said slowly. And for that, I must express my gratitude, unexpected though these circumstances may be. Harry, who had been following the exchange with intense interest, decided to ask the question that had been burning in his mind. Sir, did you know about the soul piece in my scar? Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully before answering. I suspected something unusual, Harry. A connection between you and Voldemort that should not have been possible with his physical form destroyed. But the exact nature of it, no, I did not know with certainty. Yet you left me with people who hated magic, Harry pressed, finding courage in the supportive presence of the Addamses. Who tried to stamp it out of me. A shadow passed across Dumbledore's face. Your aunt's home was the only place where your mother's blood protection could be maintained. It was meant to keep you safe from Voldemort's followers who remained at large. Safe from Death Eaters, perhaps, Morticia observed coolly. But not safe from neglect, malnutrition, or psychological harm. The cupboard under the stairs, Gomez added, his usual joviality completely absent. Hardly appropriate accommodation for the heir of an ancient and noble house, Dumbledore. For a moment, the ancient wizard looked genuinely remorseful. If what you say is true, and I have no reason to doubt it, then I have made a grave error in judgment. I believed Petunia would overcome her differences with her sister for the sake of her orphan nephew. He sighed heavily. It seems I was mistaken. Spectacularly so, Wednesday commented drily. Dumbledore regarded the Addams family collectively, his expression calculating beneath the veneer of grandfatherly concern. What are your intentions for Harry's future? His place at Hogwarts is secured and anticipated, Morticia finished for him. We have no desire to separate Harry from his birthright as a British wizard or his heritage as James and Lily Potter's son. He will attend Hogwarts when he turns 11, as his parents would have wished. But until then, Gomez added, he remains under our guardianship and tutelage. Learning both the old ways of the Addams family and the foundations of conventional magic that will serve him at Hogwarts. I see, Dumbledore said again, though his tone suggested he was rapidly reassessing his approach. And what of Harry's public role? The wizarding world has certain expectations of the boy who lived. Harry is a child, not a symbol, Morticia stated firmly. His obligations to British wizarding society begin and end with his own education and well-being. Any additional expectations will be evaluated based on their merit and Harry's own wishes. Harry felt a surge of gratitude toward Morticia. No one had ever so clearly prioritized his needs and wishes before. A reasonable position, Dumbledore conceded, though he looked far from convinced. However, there are matters of inheritance, of prophecy, of destiny that cannot be simply set aside. Prophecy? Harry interrupted, unable to contain his curiosity. Dumbledore hesitated, glancing from Harry to the Addams parents and back. Perhaps a discussion for another time, when he's older? Gomez suggested. When it's more convenient. No, my good man. An Addams faces destiny head-on. If there's a prophecy concerning the boy, he has a right to know it. The knowledge is dangerous, Dumbledore protested. There are those who would stop at nothing to learn its contents. Then we shall take appropriate precautions, Morticia said reasonably. But keeping Harry ignorant of matters that directly concern him is neither protective nor respectful. Dumbledore studied them for a long moment, seemingly weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. Very well. A compromise, perhaps. I will share what I can safely reveal at this time, with the understanding that certain details must wait until Harry is better equipped to protect this knowledge. That's acceptable, Morticia agreed after exchanging a glance with Gomez. Dumbledore turned to face Harry directly. Before you were born, Harry, a prophecy was made concerning a child who would have the power to defeat Lord Voldemort. The specifics are closely guarded, but it referred to a boy born at the end of July, whose parents had defied Voldemort 3 times. 2 children fit this description, you and another boy. Neville Longbottom, Wednesday interjected, earning a surprised look from Dumbledore. Process of elimination. The Longbottoms were the only other family who repeatedly opposed Voldemort and had a child born in late July 1980. Your daughter is remarkably well informed, Dumbledore observed, not for the first time. Wednesday has an analytical mind and access to our library's historical records, Morticia said with maternal pride. Please continue. Voldemort learned of part of the prophecy and chose to target you, Harry, marking you as his equal when he gave you that scar. Dumbledore's eyes flickered to Harry's forehead. In doing so, he set the prophecy in motion and forged a connection between you that I am, relieved to hear has been severed by the goblin's ritual. So this prophecy is why he killed my parents? Why he tried to kill me? Harry asked, trying to process this revelation. Yes, Dumbledore confirmed. He believed he was eliminating a future threat. Instead, he fulfilled the very prophecy he feared and endowed you with powers that may eventually lead to his final defeat. But he's already defeated, Harry pointed out. Everyone says he died when he tried to kill me. A heavy silence followed this statement. Dumbledore's expression grew solemn. I believe, Harry, and this must remain within these walls, that Voldemort is not truly dead. Disembodied, weakened, but not gone. The soul fragment in your scar suggests he took steps to prevent his complete destruction. Steps that may eventually allow him to return. Rather than appearing shocked or frightened by this announcement, the Addams family seemed almost intrigued. Fascinating, Morticia murmured. Multiple anchors, then. The fragment in Harry's scar couldn't have been the only one. A true immortality strategy, Wednesday noted with clinical interest. Grandmama will want to analyze the magical theory behind it. For academic purposes, of course. The goblins suspected something similar, Gomez added. Mentioned instabilities in certain old vaults associated with known Death Eater families. Could be related. Dumbledore looked increasingly disconcerted by their technical interest in what he clearly viewed as a matter of grave moral concern. This is not merely an academic exercise, he cautioned. If Voldemort returns, Harry will be his primary target. All the more reason for him to be prepared, Morticia pointed out. To understand both the threat and his own capabilities. The boy will be ready, Gomez declared confidently. By the time he reaches Hogwarts, he'll have the combined knowledge of the Addams family behind him. 7 centuries of dealing with dark wizards, cursed objects, and vengeful spirits. That's not entirely reassuring, Dumbledore admitted. It should be, Wednesday stated flatly. Our family has survived witch hunts, inquisitions, and multiple attempts at genocide by superstitious mobs. We're still here. Those who attacked us aren't. Dumbledore seemed to be reassessing the Addams family with each passing moment. His initial approach, that of a benevolent authority figure coming to rectify a misunderstanding, had clearly been rendered ineffective by their knowledge, confidence, and united front. I can see that Harry's education is being taken seriously, he acknowledged. Though I would caution against focusing too heavily on aspects of magic that might be considered questionable by broader wizarding society. Questionable is subjective, Morticia observed. What the Ministry classifies as dark often has more to do with control than with actual harm. Nevertheless, Dumbledore pressed, Harry will eventually need to navigate that society and its expectations. Being too closely associated with certain magical traditions could make his path more difficult. Or it could give him the edge needed to survive what's coming, Gomez countered. Conventional defenses clearly weren't enough to protect his parents. A flash of pain crossed Dumbledore's features at this pointed statement. James and Lily were betrayed by someone they trusted implicitly, he said quietly. No magical protection can fully guard against such treachery. Yet another lesson for Harry to learn, Morticia noted. Trust, but verify. An Addams family motto. Along with, sic Gorgiamus allos subjectatos nunc, Pugsley added cheerfully from his position near the door, where he had been unusually quiet throughout the meeting. We gladly feast on those who would subdue us, Dumbledore translated fluently, raising an eyebrow. A rather provocative family motto. We find it keeps unwanted solicitors at bay, Gomez said with a grin. The conversation continued for another hour, with Dumbledore probing the Addamses' intentions and capabilities while they in turn questioned him about Harry's heritage, the Potter vaults, and the specifics of what awaited Harry in the British wizarding world. Throughout, Harry observed with growing appreciation for his new family's unwavering advocacy. They neither deferred to Dumbledore's authority nor antagonized him unnecessarily, instead maintaining a position of respectful but uncompromising equality. By the time Dumbledore rose to leave, it was clear he had accepted, if not entirely embraced, the new reality of Harry's guardianship. The faint lines of tension around his eyes suggested he was already recalculating his long-term plans. I shall look forward to welcoming you to Hogwarts when the time comes, Harry, he said, extending a hand. Perhaps we might correspond occasionally in the meantime. I was quite fond of your parents and would be pleased to share my memories of them with you. I'd like that, sir, Harry replied honestly, shaking the offered hand. Despite everything, he couldn't help feeling that Dumbledore genuinely cared for him, even if his methods had been deeply flawed. Excellent. And Mr. and Mrs. Addams, I trust you will keep me informed of any unusual developments in Harry's education or well-being? Of course, Morticia agreed smoothly. Assuming you extend the same courtesy regarding matters pertaining to Harry's future at Hogwarts or any further insights into the prophecy. Dumbledore inclined his head, acknowledging the implicit negotiation. A reasonable arrangement. Until we meet again, then. After Lurch had escorted the headmaster out, the family gathered in the parlor to discuss the encounter. Well played, cara mia, Gomez said admiringly to Morticia. You had the old wizard on the back foot from the moment you mentioned the Horcrux. He's recalibrating, Morticia observed thoughtfully. He came expecting to either reclaim Harry or at least establish his authority over Harry's upbringing. He's leaving with a cooperative relationship instead. He didn't tell us everything about the prophecy, Wednesday noted. His phrasing suggested significant omissions. Of course not, Grandmama cackled. Man's got more secrets than my ingredient cabinet. But he revealed more than he intended, I'd wager. Harry, who had been quiet since Dumbledore's departure, finally spoke up. He really believes Voldemort will come back. It wasn't a question. Yes, Morticia confirmed, her expression serious. And in this, I believe he is sincere. The presence of the soul fragment in your scar confirms that Voldemort took steps to anchor himself to this world. Then I need to be ready, Harry said with determination. If he's going to come after me again, I need to know how to protect myself. How to fight back. Gomez's face split into a proud grin. That's the spirit, my boy. And you will be ready. The combined knowledge of the Addams family, the Potter legacy, and the best education Hogwarts can provide, why, you'll be the most formidable wizard of your generation. But not alone, Morticia added gently. Whatever comes, Harry, you will face it with your family behind you. Always. Harry looked around at the Addamses, Gomez with his boundless enthusiasm, Morticia with her quiet strength, Wednesday and Pugsley with their unwavering loyalty, Grandmama with her ancient wisdom, Fester with his explosive ingenuity, and even Lurch with his steadfast presence. His family. His people. For the first time since learning about the prophecy, he felt not fear but determination. Voldemort might return one day, but when he did, he wouldn't find the helpless infant he had attacked 5 years ago. He would find Harry Potter Addams, raised by a family who embraced the darkness without being consumed by it, who understood that power came in many forms, and who knew that love, even the macabre, peculiar love of the Addams family, was the strongest magic of all. "Now then," Gomez declared, clapping his hands together. "Enough serious talk for one day. Who's up for a game of Wake the Dead before dinner?" As Harry followed his siblings toward the family graveyard, laughing at Pugsley's description of the best techniques for disturbing ancestral rest, he reflected that life as an Addams might be strange by most standards, but it was undeniably his. And for a boy who had spent 5 years unwanted and unloved in a cupboard under the stairs, that was magic enough. Chapter 3, Two worlds collide. The full moon cast long shadows across the Addams mansion grounds as Harry Potter Addams stood perfectly still at the center of the family graveyard, his eyes closed in concentration. 6 years had passed since his rescue from the Dursleys, transforming him from a malnourished, timid child into a confident young wizard on the cusp of 11. Around him, weathered tombstones tilted at irregular angles, some bearing names dating back centuries, others freshly carved with morbid epitaphs that would have horrified ordinary mourners but delighted generations of Addamses. "Focus, Harry," Morticia's velvet voice instructed from somewhere to his left. "Feel the boundary between worlds. Its thinnest during the witching hour." Harry breathed deeply, extending his magical senses as he'd been taught. After years of training, he could perceive the subtle energies that most wizards ignored, the ancient power residing in blood and bone, in shadow and stone. Tonight's lesson was Necromancy Basics, a traditional rite of passage for Addams children approaching their 11th birthday. "I can feel it," he murmured, a shiver running down his spine that had nothing to do with the midnight chill. "Like a veil brushing against my skin." "Excellent." Morticia glided closer, her pale face luminous in the moonlight. "Now, call to your ancestors. Not with your voice, but with your intent. The Potters have walked beyond the veil, but they remain connected to you through blood." Harry focused on the small silver bowl before him, filled with a mixture of graveyard soil, his own freely given blood, and herbs harvested under the dark moon. 6 years of Addams' education had taught him that intent was the foundation of all-powerful magic, wandless, wordless, and free from ministry detection. He thought of his parents, their faces now familiar from the photographs and memories others had shared. He thought of the Potter lineage stretching back generations, connecting eventually to the Peverills and, through them, to the Addams line. He reached out with his magic, calling silently. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air around the silver bowl shimmered, condensing into pearlescent wisps that swirled upward, gradually forming indistinct shapes. Not full apparitions, true resurrection being beyond even Addams' family magic, but impressions, echoes from beyond. James and Lily Potter, Morticia identified softly as the mist took on vaguely humanoid forms. "They answer your call, Harry." Harry opened his eyes, heart pounding as he beheld the ghostly shapes. Though their features were indistinct, he could sense their presence, feel the unmistakable warmth of their love reaching across the boundary between life and death. "Mom." "Dad," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The misty figures couldn't speak, but they swayed toward him, conveying without words their recognition, their pride, their enduring connection. "The dead hear us," Wednesday intoned from where she stood with Pugsley at the edge of the ritual circle. "They watch. They remember." "Quite right," Gomez agreed, his usual exuberance tempered by the solemnity of the moment. "This is old magic, Harry. Respected but feared by conventional wizards who've forgotten that death is merely another state of being, not a final ending." Harry reached out toward the shimmering forms, not attempting to touch them. The Addams education had been very specific about the dangers of direct contact with spectral manifestations, but acknowledging their presence. "I wish I could hear them," he admitted. "Some boundaries shouldn't be crossed," Morticia cautioned gently. "But know that they are aware of you, Harry. The dead know what happens in the realm of the living, especially regarding those they loved most deeply. They've seen you grow," Grandmama added from where she tended the sacred fire burning in an ancient brazier. "Seen you thrive with us. James would be tickled pink, or perhaps appropriately deathly gray, to know his son is being raised by a family that practices the old ways. The misty shapes lingered for several more minutes before gradually dissipating, the temporary thinning of the veil between worlds closing as the witching hour passed. Harry remained kneeling, processing the profound experience of his first successful necromantic ritual. "Well done," Morticia praised, placing a cool hand on his shoulder. "A natural affinity. Your mother's talent for charms combined with your father's power, I think. And the Addams education," Gomez added proudly. 6 years of proper magical immersion. None of that namby-pamby, wait until Hogwarts business. Harry stood, carefully collecting the ritual components for proper disposal. "Will I be able to do this at Hogwarts?" he asked. "Unlikely," Wednesday answered before either parent could. "The castle's wards discourage necromantic workings, and the British wizarding authorities classify communion with the dead as dark magic, except, hypocritically, when they wish to employ ghosts as messengers or spies." "Your sister is correct," Morticia confirmed. "At Hogwarts, you'll need to adapt to their more conventional magical framework. Wands and incantations rather than blood and intent. But the foundation we've built will serve you well," Gomez assured him. "You'll grasp their teaching all the more quickly for understanding the deeper principles beneath." As they walked back toward the mansion, the family graveyard returning to its usual state of ominous serenity, Harry reflected on how thoroughly his life had changed. From a neglected child forbidden to mention magic, he had become heir to two powerful magical traditions, the ancient practices of the Addams family and the more conventional wizardry of his Potter heritage. The last 6 years had been filled with intensive education, languages, Latin, Greek, and Parseltongue, magical theory, potions, herbology, defensive magic, ritual crafting, and countless other subjects deemed essential by the Addams curriculum. His adoptive siblings had been with him every step of the way, Wednesday with her clinical precision and encyclopedic knowledge of poisons, Pugsley with his explosive enthusiasm for practical applications of magical chaos. The Hogwarts letter would arrive any day now, heralding the next chapter of his journey. Harry found himself both eager and apprehensive. While he longed to walk the halls his parents had traversed, to learn the specific magic of his birth heritage, he wondered how the conventional wizarding world would receive a Harry Potter raised by the notorious Addams family. "You're brooding," Wednesday observed as they entered the mansion's grand foyer. "Contemplating the imminent cultural collision?" Harry smiled at his sister's characteristic directness. At 13, Wednesday had only grown more perceptive and deadpan over the years, her dark braids and solemn expression unchanged despite her increasing height. "Just wondering what Hogwarts will make of me," he admitted. "And what I'll make of it." "They'll be terrified, of course," she replied matter-of-factly. "Their savior, raised by a family renowned for practicing magic they've deemed taboo for centuries. The political implications alone will cause significant institutional distress." "Wednesday," Morticia chided gently, "while accurate, your assessment might increase your brother's apprehension." "Nonsense," Gomez declared, clapping Harry on the shoulder. "The boys and Addams now. We thrive on causing institutional distress. It's practically the family motto." "I thought our motto was, sic gorgiamus allos subjectados nunc?" Pugsley asked, his round face screwed up in confusion. "That's the official one," Gomez confirmed. "The unofficial addendum is, and let them stew in delicious discomfort while we do it." Harry laughed, his momentary concerns dispelled by his family's unwavering support. Whatever challenges awaited him at Hogwarts, he would face them with the confidence of a child who had been unconditionally loved, comprehensively educated, and thoroughly prepared for both wonder and adversity. "Now then," Morticia said as Lurch appeared with a tray of steaming nightshade tea, "while we wait for Harry's Hogwarts letter, we should finalize our plans for his 11th birthday celebration. I've been corresponding with the Romanian coven about borrowing a few vampires for authentic atmosphere." Harry's Hogwarts letter arrived the very next morning, delivered by a somewhat traumatized owl that refused to enter the mansion after nearly being eaten by Morticia's carnivorous Venus flytrap in the conservatory. Thing retrieved the envelope from the wary bird, presenting it to Harry with a flourish as the family gathered for breakfast. "It's here!" Gomez exclaimed, leaping from his chair with characteristic energy. "The official summons. The call to wizardly adventure. The validation of your dual heritage." "It's a school acceptance letter, Father," Wednesday corrected Drilly. "Not a knighthood." Harry accepted the heavy parchment envelope, running his fingers over the purple wax seal bearing the Hogwarts crest. Despite knowing it would come, seeing his name and address written in emerald ink sent a thrill through him. "Mr. H. Potter Addams, the East Tower Bedroom, Addams Mansion, Cemetery Ridge, Westfield, New Jersey. They still recognize your Addams name," Morticia noted with satisfaction. "Despite any potential pressure from the British Ministry to revert to Potter alone." "Go on, open it," Pugsley urged, practically bouncing in his seat. At 12, he had grown into a stocky, energetic boy whose enthusiasm for explosions had only increased with age and education. Harry broke the seal and unfolded the parchment, reading aloud, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confede, of Wizards, dear Mr. Potter Addams, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress." A second page listed required supplies, from standard spellbooks and potion ingredients to the mandatory wand and the option to bring a pet, an owl, cat, or toad. "Just like your parents," Grandmama said, wiping away what might have been a tear or possibly potion residue. "Though James and Lily certainly didn't have our flair when they attended. We must reply immediately," Morticia decided. "And begin preparations for our journey to London. Diagon Alley awaits." "The British Wizarding Shopping District," Wednesday explained, seeing Harry's questioning look. "Where conventional magical families purchase their standardized educational supplies through regulated channels, instead of crafting or harvesting their own as we prefer. It's quite charming in its way," Gomez assured Harry. "Quaint shops, eccentric merchants, goblins handling the gold, what's not to love? The ministry officials monitoring 4 dark artifacts," Wednesday suggested. "The limited selection of truly useful potions ingredients. The absence of properly cursed objects. Details, details." Gomez waved dismissively. "The point is, it's a magnificent opportunity to introduce Harry to his birth culture while simultaneously shocking British magical sensibilities with our Addams presence. Win-win." Morticia smiled, that subtle, knowing smile that Harry had come to recognize as her expression of fond amusement at her husband's enthusiasm. "We'll make arrangements to travel next week. The international port key will be interesting with the entire family." "The entire family?" Harry asked, surprised and touched. "Of course," Gomez declared. "Your first foray into the British wizarding world should be a family affair. Besides, we haven't given the European magical community a good scare in years." "I'll pack my collection of venomous specimens," Wednesday decided. "British import restrictions are notoriously speciesist. And I'll bring my new portable explosion kit," Pugsley added excitedly. "The one that fits in a matchbox until activated." Harry grinned, imagining the scene that would unfold when the Addams clan descended en masse on Diagon Alley. If nothing else, his entry into the wizarding world would be memorable. "There's something else we should consider," Morticia said, her tone becoming more serious. "Harry's public reception. The boy who lived, appearing after years of speculation about his whereabouts, will cause quite a stir. We've prepared him for that," Gomez assured her. 6 years of proper Addams training. The boy can handle a few gawkers and gossips." "Undoubtedly," Morticia agreed. "But perhaps we should contact the goblins in advance, arrange for a more controlled initial exposure. Gringotts first, then shopping." "Excellent thinking, cara mia," Gomez exclaimed. Strategic as always. We'll coordinate with Ragnarok, he's always had a soft spot for the boy since extracting that nasty soul fragment. Harry, who had maintained regular contact with Gringotts over the years as he learned to manage his Potter inheritance under Gomez's tutelage, nodded appreciatively. That makes sense. I'd rather not be ambushed by strangers the moment we arrive. It's settled then, Morticia concluded. Lurch, please fetch the international communication mirror. We have arrangements to make. As the family dispersed to prepare for the upcoming journey, Harry remained at the table, rereading his Hogwarts letter. Despite his extensive magical education with the Addamses, this tangible connection to his parents' world felt momentous, a bridge between his past and future. Thing scuttled across the table and gave his hand a sympathetic pat, somehow conveying understanding without words. Thanks, Thing, Harry said with a smile. It's a lot to take in. But I'm ready. Thing offered an encouraging thumbs up before retrieving a quill and parchment for Harry's acceptance letter. As he composed his formal response to Professor McGonagall, Harry felt a curious blend of emotions, excitement for the journey ahead, gratitude for the family that had prepared him, and a quiet determination to honor both his Potter heritage and his Addams upbringing as he stepped into the world that had both celebrated and forgotten him. 1 week later, the Addams family emerged from the International Portkey arrival point at the Ministry of Magic in London, creating an immediate stir among the usually unflappable Transportation Department employees. Gomez led the procession in a pinstriped suit that somehow managed to be simultaneously elegant and slightly off-kilter, twirling his mustache as he surveyed the sterile official surroundings with undisguised interest. Morticia glided beside him, her floor-length black dress and ghostly pallor drawing startled glances from passers-by. Wednesday and Pugsley followed, both dressed in matching black outfits that made them look like miniature undertakers. Grandmama cackled as she examined the ministry's enchanted windows, loudly critiquing their spellwork as flashy but fundamentally flawed, while Uncle Fester, who had insisted on joining the expedition, immediately began testing the conductivity of various magical objects by attempting to stick his finger in them. Lurch brought up the rear, carrying most of the family luggage with effortless strength, his towering frame and cadaverous features causing several ministry workers to drop their papers in shock. Harry, walking between his parents, couldn't help grinning at the commotion their arrival was causing. After years of Addams family normalcy, he sometimes forgot how startling they appeared to outsiders. Mr. and Mrs. Addams. A harried-looking ministry official approached, consulting a clipboard. And Mr. Potter Addams. His eyes flicked to Harry's forehead, where the lightning scar was partially visible through his dark, perpetually messy hair. Indeed. Gomez confirmed cheerfully, pumping the man's hand with excessive vigor. The Addams clan, reporting for duty. Here to outfit young Harry for his educational adventure at Hogwarts. Yes, well. The official seemed at a loss for words. We weren't. That is to say, international arrivals typically require more advance notice for family groups of this size. Oh, but we did give notice, Morticia interjected smoothly. Our arrangements were confirmed through Gringotts' diplomatic channels. Director Ragnarok himself oversaw the paperwork. The mention of the Goblin director's name worked immediate magic on the official's demeanor. Gringotts' channels. I see. That explains. Well, in that case, welcome to Britain, Mr. and Mrs. Addams. And welcome back, Mr. Potter. If you'll just follow me for the standard arrival processing. The processing consisted mainly of magical scans for contraband and dark artifacts, a procedure that proved exceptionally time-consuming given the Addams family's eclectic collection of possessions. Grandmama's carpet bag alone triggered 17 different detection spells, though she maintained with perfect innocence that eye of newt and toe of frog were standard potion ingredients, not restricted substances. Fester's suitcase had to be quarantined when something inside began emitting ominous ticking sounds and wisps of green smoke. Just my alarm clock, he protested. Sure, it's powered by slightly unstable alchemical compounds, but that's what makes the wake-up call so invigorating. Eventually, after much negotiation, form signing, and the confiscation of only the most egregiously dangerous items, with promises to return them upon the family's departure from Britain, they were cleared to enter Wizarding London proper. "We'll escort you to the Leaky Cauldron," the official announced, still eyeing Lurch nervously. "From there, you can access Diagon Alley. Given Mr. Potter's status, we thought you might appreciate a less public arrival point." "How thoughtful," Morticia murmured, though Harry detected a note of amusement in her voice. The ministry's concern was clearly less for his privacy and more for controlling the inevitable public reaction to his reappearance. They were led through the ministry's elaborate flue network to emerge in a private room at the back of the Leaky Cauldron, a wizarding pub, and in that, as Gomez enthusiastically informed Harry, had been serving as the gateway between Muggle and magical London for centuries. "Your accommodation has been arranged for the next 3 nights, the official explained, addressing Gomez and Morticia while continuing to steal glances at Harry. "The innkeeper, Tom, has prepared your rooms according to your unique specifications." "Splendid," Gomez declared. "Bats in the belfry? Creaking floorboards? Properly gloomy lighting?" Yes," the official confirmed, looking somewhat disturbed. "All arranged as requested. Now, if there's nothing else." "One moment," Morticia said. "We understand Gringotts is expecting us this afternoon. Could you confirm whether their representative has arrived?" The official consulted his clipboard again. "Yes, a goblin liaison is waiting in the private parlor to escort your family directly to the bank. Most irregular, but Director Ragnarok was most insistent on the arrangements." "Excellent. Thank you for your assistance." Morticia dismissed him with gracious finality. As the official departed with evident relief, the goblin liaison entered, a sharp-featured female wearing the formal uniform of Gringotts Diplomatic Corps. "Greetings, Family Addams," she said with a formal bow. "I am Steelclaw, assigned by Director Ragnarok to facilitate your business in Diagon Alley. The director sends his personal regards to Heir Potter Addams and expresses his anticipation of your visit to the bank." "Steelclaw!" Gomez exclaimed, returning the bow with theatrical flourish. "Charmed. Absolutely charmed. Your reputation precedes you. Didn't you negotiate that delightfully cutthroat treaty with the French ministry last year?" The goblin's stern features relaxed marginally, clearly pleased by the recognition. "Indeed, Mr. Addams. The French still haven't realized how thoroughly they were outmaneuvered." She turned to Harry with a respectful nod. "Heir Potter Addams. You've grown considerably since the inheritance ritual 6 years ago." "Thank you for meeting us," Harry replied with the formal courtesy Morticia had drilled into him for dealing with goblins. "May your gold flow and your enemies tremble. And may your vaults multiply and your magic flourish," Steelclaw returned, approval evident in her tone. "Now, if you're ready, I suggest we proceed directly to Gringotts. Word of your arrival is already spreading through the alley, and the bank offers more controlled conditions for your first public appearance." The wisdom of this advice became immediately apparent when they entered the main room of the Leaky Cauldron. Despite the ministry's attempt at a discreet arrival, the pub was unusually crowded, with witches and wizards of all descriptions pretending unconvincingly to be engaged in casual conversation while stealing glances at the doorway. A hush fell as the Addams family emerged, led by Steelclaw. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then the whispers began. "It's him, Harry Potter. Who are those people with him? Merlin's beard, is that an Addams? I thought they never left America. The boy who lived, raised by the Addams family. No wonder Dumbledore kept it quiet." Harry, prepared for this reaction by years of discussion with his family, maintained his composure, keeping his expression neutral but not unfriendly as Gomez had advised. "Acknowledge their interest without inviting intrusion," had been Morticia's counsel. "You are neither a circus attraction nor a recluse, you are a young wizard going about his business. Mr. Potter." An elderly witch finally broke the tableau, approaching with trembling excitement. "After all these years. We've wondered where, Heir Potter Addams is proceeding directly to Gringotts," Steelclaw interjected firmly, stepping between Harry and the witch. Official business. Gringotts security protocols in effect. The invocation of goblin security protocols was enough to give even the most enthusiastic well-wishers pause. The crowd reluctantly parted, though many continued to stare openly as the family followed Steelclaw through the pub and out into the small courtyard that concealed the entrance to Diagon Alley. "Vultures," Wednesday commented quietly to Harry. "Feeding on the notoriety of your survival and disappearance. Predictable but distasteful." "They're just curious," Harry replied, though he appreciated his sister's protective instinct. "They've been told stories about me for years. Stories that have nothing to do with who I actually am." A mature perspective, Morticia noted approvingly. "Remember, Harry, their reactions reflect their own preconceptions, not your reality." Steelclaw tapped a specific pattern on the courtyard's brick wall with one long finger. The bricks rearranged themselves, forming an archway that revealed a winding cobblestone street lined with the most eclectic assortment of shops Harry had ever seen. "Diagon Alley," Gomez announced with a sweep of his arm. "The commercial heart of magical Britain. Where galleons change hands, wands choose wizards, and marketing enchantments separate fools from their gold." Despite having seen magical settlements before during family trips to various unconventional destinations, Harry couldn't help being impressed by Diagon Alley. The narrow street pulsed with magical energy, from the animated mannequins displaying robes in shop windows to the owls swooping between buildings delivering packages. Cauldrons stacked precariously outside an apothecary gleamed in the sunlight, while strange musical instruments played themselves in another shop's display. "We'll proceed directly to Gringotts," Steelclaw instructed, setting a brisk pace. "Eyes are already following your progress." Indeed, Harry could feel the attention as they moved through the alley. Shoppers stopped mid-transaction to stare. Children pointed. Several people actually dropped their purchases. The Addams family alone would have caused a stir in the relatively conservative British wizarding community. The Addams family accompanying Harry Potter created a sensation bordering on mass hysteria. "I feel like we should be charging admission," Pugsley whispered to Harry, clearly enjoying the commotion. "Think of the explosive materials we could buy with the proceeds." "Hush, Pugsley," Morticia admonished gently. "We're here to support Harry, not capitalize on his fame." "Though it's not a bad idea for future consideration," Gomez mused. "Addams Family Public Appearances, Limited. Could be a lucrative side venture." They reached Gringotts without being actively accosted, though Harry had to politely decline numerous handshake attempts and deflect several camera-wielding individuals who looked like reporters. The imposing marble building with its ominous poetic warning above the doors was a welcome sight, goblin territory, where human wizard entitlement held less sway. Inside, the bank's usual activities paused momentarily as goblins and customers alike registered the unusual group being escorted by Steelclaw. Unlike the wizards in the alley, however, the goblins quickly returned to business with professional indifference, while their human clients were firmly discouraged from gawking by stern tellers. "Director Ragnarok awaits in the inheritance office," Steelclaw informed them, leading the family past the public area toward a corridor of private meeting rooms. The inheritance office was an impressive chamber lined with genealogical charts and ancient artifacts. Director Ragnarok himself rose from behind an ornate desk as they entered, offering the slight bow that was a significant honor coming from a goblin of his rank. "Family Addams," he greeted. "Heir Potter Addams. Welcome to Gringotts, London." "Director Ragnarok," Gomez returned with equal formality. "You honor us with your personal attention." "The Potter-Addams alliance remains of special interest to Gringotts," Ragnarok replied, gesturing for them to be seated in chairs that appeared suspiciously like goblin-crafted thrones. "Particularly as Heir Potter approaches his formal entry into British wizarding society." The next hour was devoted to financial and legal matters, reviewing Harry's accounts, which had been managed jointly by Gringotts and Gomez over the years, discussing his status as both Potter heir and Addams family member, and addressing the potential political implications of his return to Britain. "The ministry has made several attempts to gain information about your location and upbringing," Ragnarok informed Harry. Most recently through legislation allegedly designed to protect the interests of orphaned heirs but transparently aimed at your specific case. Let me guess, Morticia said. Proposed by families with Death Eater connections, seeking to establish guardianship claims over Harry's estate. Precisely, Mrs. Addams, Ragnarok confirmed with a sharp-toothed smile. Fortunately, Goblin inheritance law supersedes wizard legislation in such matters. The blood adoption ritual we performed 6 years ago created an unbreakable legal bond that even the Wisengamot cannot challenge. And Harry's seats on the Wisengamot? Gomez inquired. He'll be able to claim them when he comes of age. Both the Potter family seat and the Black family seat designated to him through his godfather's will, Ragnarok confirmed. Though the latter remains contested by certain parties. Sirius Black, Harry said quietly. His godfather remained imprisoned in Azkaban for betraying the Potters, a circumstance that had troubled the Addams family greatly as they uncovered inconsistencies in the official narrative over the years. Indeed, Ragnarok's expression turned grim. A situation we continue to investigate, as you requested. The lack of trial transcripts remains suspicious. When I'm of age, Harry stated with quiet determination, I'll have the authority to demand a proper investigation. Until then, we continue gathering evidence discreetly, Ragnarok finished for him. Now, to more immediate concerns. Your educational trust vault contains more than sufficient funds for your Hogwarts expenses. I've prepared a special Gringotts draft pouch linked directly to the vault, more secure than carrying large quantities of galleons through the alley. The business concluded with Ragnarok providing Harry his vault key, a formality, as the key had been held in trust by Gringotts since the inheritance ritual, and offering the family Gringotts formal protection during their stay in Britain. The boy who lived, raised by the Addams family, has created quite the stir already, the Goblin director observed with what might have been amusement. I anticipate the reaction will only intensify as you conduct your shopping. Steelclaw will remain with you as both guide and deterrent against the more enthusiastic elements of wizarding society. Most generous, Morticia acknowledged. Though I assure you, we Addamses are quite accustomed to managing unwanted attention. Often by encouraging even more unwanted attention until the original offenders retreat in confusion, Wednesday added helpfully. Ragnarok's sharp laugh echoed through the chamber. I have no doubt of that, young Miss Addams. Now, I believe you have a considerable shopping list to address. Steelclaw will guide you to the establishments most likely to meet your unique standards. As they prepared to venture into Diagon Alley proper, Harry felt a curious mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The financial and legal discussions had been familiar territory after years of Gomez's tutelage in managing the Potter estate. The public scrutiny awaiting him outside Gringotts' protective walls, however, would be a new challenge entirely. Ready, my boy? Gomez asked, clapping him on the shoulder. Time to show Wizarding Britain what a Potter Addams is made of. Harry nodded, straightening his shoulders. Ready, father. Remember, Morticia added softly, you honor both your heritages by simply being yourself. Neither Potter nor Addams alone, but both together. With those words bolstering his confidence, Harry stepped back into Diagon Alley, no longer hidden away in America, but publicly claiming his place in the wizarding world that had both orphaned and idolized him. The news of Harry Potter's appearance in Diagon Alley, accompanied by the infamous Addams family, no less, spread through Wizarding Britain with the speed of a firebolt. By the time the family emerged from Gringotts, the already busy street had become positively congested with witches and wizards hoping to catch a glimpse of the boy who lived. Flourish and blots first for your schoolbooks, Steelclaw suggested, eyeing the growing crowd with professional wariness. Then Madame Malkin's for robes. The wand should be last. Ollivander's ritual of matching takes time and draws particular attention. The bookshop proved enlightening in unexpected ways. While Harry collected the required first-year texts under Steelclaw's efficient guidance, Morticia discovered the Harry Potter section, a collection of fictional children's books depicting the supposed adventures of the boy who lived during his mysterious years of training. Harry Potter and the Dragon's Den, she read aloud, examining one luridly illustrated cover showing a black-haired child battling a Hungarian horntail. Young Harry befriends and ultimately tames a fearsome dragon while learning important lessons about courage and friendship. How creative. Ooh, I like this one, Pugsley exclaimed, holding up another volume. Harry Potter and the Vampire Count, apparently you single-handedly saved a village from a vampire invasion when you were 8. Curious that no one sought permission to use your name and likeness, Wednesday observed, flipping through Harry Potter and the Mermaid's Pearl with evident distaste. This constitutes defamation and unauthorized commercial exploitation. Grounds for significant litigation. Now, children, Gomez cautioned, though his eyes gleamed with the anticipation of legal battle, let's not be hasty. These literary abominations, creative interpretations, could prove valuable in demonstrating just how thoroughly the wizarding world has mythologized Harry without his consent. Harry, examining the books with bemused horror, couldn't help but agree. I was supposedly battling mountain trolls when I was actually learning Greek conjugation with Wednesday. A far more harrowing experience, I assure you, his sister deadpanned. The shop owner, recognizing Harry despite his attempts to remain inconspicuous, approached with nervous enthusiasm. Mr. Potter. What an honor. Would you perhaps consider a small signing event? Just a few books for our most dedicated customers. That's Herr Potter Addams, Steelclaw corrected sharply. And he is not available for commercial engagements during his school shopping. Besides, Morticia added with velvet danger in her tone, we're quite interested in discussing the royalties due to Harry from these unauthorized publications. Perhaps your manager could provide contact information for the publishers. The shopkeeper blanched. I'll just wrap up your schoolbooks, shall I? He retreated hastily, leaving the family to continue browsing. In addition to the required texts, Harry selected several supplementary volumes on magical theory, potions, and defensive magic, subjects the Addams education had covered extensively but from perspectives that often differed from mainstream wizarding approaches. Knowledge is power, Wednesday reminded him as he hesitated over Modern Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. Understanding how they teach magic will help you translate your Addams education into their frameworks. Their next stop, Madame Malkin's Robes for All Occasions, created another minor sensation. The proprietress, a squat witch dressed in mauve, did a visible double-take when the Addams family entered her shop, led by the ever-vigilant Steelclaw. Hogwarts, dear, she asked Harry, recovering her professional demeanor. I've got another young man being fitted up just now. She directed Harry to a fitting area where a pale, pointed-faced boy was already standing on a footstool while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Gomez and Morticia remained nearby, examining the fabric selections with critical eyes, while Wednesday and Pugsley wandered off to investigate the more unusual garments on display. Hello, the blond boy said as Harry took his place on an adjacent stool. Hogwarts too? Yes, Harry replied politely as Madame Malkin slipped a long robe over his head and began pinning it to the right length. My father's next door buying my books and mother's up the street looking at wands, the boy continued in a bored, drawling voice. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by the boy's entitled attitude. 6 years with the Addamses had taught him to value directness, but this seemed like simple rudeness. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. Not yet, Harry answered. I've been more focused on other aspects of magic. Play Quidditch at all? Occasionally, Harry said, thinking of the modified version the family played over the mansion's swamp, where additional points were awarded for navigating the more dangerous obstacles. Though our version has more hazards than the standard game. The boy looked intrigued despite himself. Really? What sort of? He broke off, his pale eyes widening as he caught sight of Morticia gliding toward them, holding up a bolt of fabric that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Harry, darling, she said in her melodious voice, what do you think of this material for your winter cloak? It's lined with thestral hair, visible only to those who've witnessed death, but warm for everyone. The blond boy's jaw dropped. Before he could speak, Gomez bounded over, examining the fabric with enthusiasm. Magnificent, cara mia. Perfect for those damp Scottish winters. Though perhaps we should add the warming runes Grandmama suggested, the ones that cause minor but entertaining hallucinations in anyone who touches the cloak without permission. The boy was now staring openly. "You're Harry Potter," he stated, his previous drawling confidence replaced by shock. "Potter Addams," Harry corrected automatically. "And you are?" "Malfoy. Draco Malfoy." The boy seemed to be reassessing Harry entirely, his gaze flicking between Harry's scar and the unmistakably unusual couple now discussing the merits of various defensive enchantments for school robes. We heard rumors you'd returned, but not that you were with the Addams family," Morticia supplied smoothly. "Harry's guardians these past 6 years. How do you do, young Mr. Malfoy? I believe we're acquainted with your father through certain financial consortiums." Yes, I suppose." Draco seemed completely wrong-footed by this encounter, his practiced arrogance crumbling in the face of the Addams' presence. "My father never mentioned. The connection is relatively recent," Gomez explained cheerfully. "Just a few joint ventures through Gringotts' international division. Nothing that would have come up in casual conversation, I'm sure." At that moment, Wednesday approached, carrying what appeared to be a cloak made of living shadow. "Harry, this one responds to emotional states. It becomes more substantial when the wearer feels threatened, potentially useful for Hogwarts, given the statistical frequency of student accidents involving staircases and corridors." Draco Malfoy looked as though he might faint. "Is that a lethifold derivative?" he asked, his voice higher than before. "Second cousin, thrice removed," Wednesday confirmed, eyeing Draco with clinical interest. "You're familiar with magical cryptids? Perhaps you're not entirely conventional after all." Before this unexpected connection could develop further, Madame Malkin announced that Draco's robes were finished. The boy stepped down from the footstool, still staring at Harry and the Addamses with undisguised fascination. "I suppose I'll see you at Hogwarts, Potter Addams," he said, attempting to recover his composure. "Looking forward to it," Harry replied with diplomatic neutrality. The boy clearly came from a traditional wizarding family with certain expectations and prejudices, but the encounter had revealed an adaptability that might prove interesting. After Draco departed, visibly bursting to share his encounter with his parents, Madame Malkin turned to Morticia with professional determination. "Now, about these special materials you're interested in. Some of them aren't strictly regulation, but I suppose we could create a standard set for school hours and a more personalized set for evenings and weekends." The compromise proved satisfactory, and Harry soon had a complete Hogwarts wardrobe, conventional enough to meet school regulations but incorporating subtle Addams elements, from specially treated fabric that repelled minor hexes to interior pockets designed for storing potentially dangerous ingredients without contamination. As they left the shop, Harry noticed that the crowd in the alley had grown even larger, with many wizards and witches lingering, casually, near the establishments on his school list. The apothecary next, Steelclaw decided. Then the trunk shop, and finally Ollivander's. The apothecary visit was particularly entertaining, as Grandmama engaged the proprietor in a detailed debate about the proper preparation of various ingredients. Her extensive knowledge and unorthodox techniques alternately impressed and horrified the shopkeeper, who eventually conceded that her method of extracting essence of belladonna was indeed superior to the standard approach, though not one I could possibly recommend to students, madam. The magical luggage store provided Harry with a multi-compartment trunk featuring extensive security measures, expanded internal dimensions, and specialized storage for both standard school supplies and the more unusual items the Addamses insisted he might need. "The third compartment is for defense only," Gomez instructed as the shopkeeper demonstrated the trunk's features. "Emergency explosives, quick-release poisons, that sort of thing. Standard Addams travel precautions. The seventh compartment should accommodate your familiar comfortably," Morticia added. With appropriate environmental controls for whatever species you select. I still think you should take Homer, Wednesday suggested, referring to the two-headed tortoise that had taken a particular liking to Harry over the years. His Latin pronunciation is impeccable, which could be useful for spellcasting. Hogwarts only allows an owl, cat, or toad, Harry reminded her, though he appreciated the suggestion. But I might wait and see what feels right. Finally, only one stop remained on their list, Ollivanders, where Harry would acquire his first wand. The narrow, shabby shop with its peeling gold letters and dusty window display seemed unassuming, but Harry could feel the concentration of magical energy the moment they approached. The wand chooses the wizard, Morticia reminded Harry as they prepared to enter. But remember what we've taught you, the wand is a tool, not the source of your power. Your magic comes from within, from intent and will, from blood and bone. Just be yourself, my boy. Gomez encouraged. Though perhaps restrain the Parseltongue initially, might give poor Ollivander heart palpitations. Steelclaw remained outside with Lurch and Fester, who had been tasked with managing the luggage, while the core family entered the wandmaker's shop. A bell tinkled softly as they crossed the threshold, and Harry immediately felt as if he'd entered a space outside normal time, ancient, quiet, and humming with latent power. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice, and an old man emerged from the shadows of the shop, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom. "I wondered when I would be seeing you, Mr. Potter." "Potter Addams," Harry corrected politely. Indeed, Ollivander's gaze swept over the assembled Addamses with keen interest rather than the alarm most wizards displayed. "The wand-making community has been abuzz with speculation since news of your guardianship reached us. The Addams family has traditionally favored wand-makers with unconventional approaches to core materials. Gregorovitch, I believe, for the American branch. For ceremonial wands, yes," Gomez confirmed, impressed by the wand-maker's knowledge. "Though many of us incorporate familial elements into our everyday wands. My own contains a strand of Morticia's hair and a sliver of Great-Aunt Calpurnia's femur, tremendous power in family connections, you know." If Ollivander was disturbed by this information, he didn't show it. Fascinating. Different traditions, but equally valid approaches to channeling magical energy. "Now, Mr. Potter Addams, let us find your match." He produced a long tape measure with silver markings. "Which is your wand arm?" "I'm ambidextrous," Harry answered. Years of Addams training had emphasized the importance of magical versatility, including the ability to cast with either hand. "Excellent. Quite rare and most useful. Hold out both arms, then." The tape measure began taking measurements of its own accord, the distance between Harry's nostrils, the circumference of his head, the length from elbow to fingertip on both arms, while Ollivander moved among the shelves, pulling down narrow boxes. "Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance," he explained. "We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and dragon heartstrings. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand." He returned with an armful of boxes. "Your parents both purchased their first wands here, you know. Your mother's was 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. A little more power and excellent for transfiguration." Harry listened with fascination. These small details about his parents were precious additions to the knowledge he'd accumulated over the years. "Well, I say your father favored it, it's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course." The wand maker opened the first box, presenting a wand to Harry. "Try this one. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave." Harry took the wand and waved it, but Ollivander snatched it back almost immediately. "Maple and phoenix feather. 7 inches. Quite whippy." Harry tried, but he had hardly raised the wand when it, too, was snatched back by Ollivander. "No, no, here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8.5 inches, springy. Go on, try it out." Harry tried. And tried. The pile of rejected wands grew higher and higher, but far from becoming frustrated, Ollivander seemed to grow more excited with each failure. "Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere, I wonder, now, yes, why not, unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." Harry took the wand, and immediately felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand and brought it swishing down through the dusty air, producing a stream of red and gold sparks. "Oh, bravo!" Ollivander cried. "Yes, indeed, oh, very good. Well, how curious, how very curious." He put Harry's wand back into its box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, "Curious, curious." "Excuse me," Harry said, "but what's curious?" Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter Addams. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." The Addams family, usually so talkative, fell silent at this revelation. "Yes, 13.5 inches. You. Curious indeed how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter Addams. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." "Brother Wands," Wednesday whispered, her dark eyes gleaming with intellectual fascination. "The magical theory implications are substantial." "Indeed, young lady," Ollivander agreed, turning to her. "I see you understand the significance. Brother Wands cannot be forced to duel properly. Priori incantatem occurs instead, the reverse spell effect. Forcing the wands to regurgitate previous spells in reverse order," she nodded. "A potential tactical advantage, should certain prophecies come to pass." Ollivander raised an eyebrow. The Addams education is clearly comprehensive. He turned back to Harry. "That will be 7 galleons for the wand, Mr. Potter Addams." As Gomez handled the payment, Harry examined his wrapped wand, processing the implications of this connection to Voldemort. Another link between them, beyond the prophecy and the now-removed soul fragment. "Don't overthink it, Harry," Morticia advised softly, reading his expression. "Connections and parallels exist throughout magic. It's what you choose to do with your power that defines you, not the tools that channel it." As they exited the shop, rejoining Steelclaw, Lurch, and Fester outside, Harry noticed the crowd in the alley had thinned somewhat as afternoon waned, though several people still watched their progress with undisguised interest. "Just one more stop, I think," Morticia decided. The pet shop. A familiar would complete Harry's preparations. The magical menagerie was crowded with cages and tanks containing every manner of magical creature permitted as pets. Owls hooted from perches, cats of every color lounged on cushions, and toads croaked in vivarium displays. Less conventional options filled the back of the shop, puffskeins rolling contentedly in an enclosure, bright blue jobberknolls fluttering in a spacious cage, and what appeared to be a tank of ordinary tadpoles that periodically changed color. Wednesday immediately gravitated toward a glass case containing several varieties of tarantula, while Pugsley became entranced by a particularly grumpy-looking fire crab. Harry wandered through the shop, waiting for something to catch his attention in the way Morticia had described a true familiar bond. He was examining a sleek raven, technically not on the approved list, but perhaps negotiable, when he heard a commotion near the counter. A bushy-haired girl about his age was trying to calm an enormous ginger cat with a squashed face and bottle-brush tail, who seemed determined to escape her arms. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed as the cat finally broke free, leaping directly toward Harry. Instead of fleeing, however, the cat landed at his feet and stared up at him with intelligent yellow eyes, its bottle-brush tail swishing slowly. "Crookshanks," the girl cried, hurrying over. "I'm terribly sorry, he's not normally so, well, actually he is rather difficult, but the shopkeeper says he's half-nasal, which explains his unusual behavior." She trailed off as the cat, ignoring her completely, began weaving between Harry's ankles, purring loudly. "I think he likes you," the girl observed, looking surprised. "He hasn't taken to anyone else in the shop. I've been trying to persuade him to let me adopt him for nearly an hour." Harry crouched down, offering his hand to the cat, who immediately butted his head against it, purring even louder. "Hello there," he said softly. "Crookshanks, is it?" "That's what his nameplate said," the girl confirmed. "He's been here for ages, apparently. No one wanted him because of his appearance." She bit her lip. "Were you looking for a cat?" "Because if you were going to take him, I'd be disappointed but I'd understand. He clearly prefers you." Harry looked up at the earnest girl, then back at Crookshanks, who was now attempting to climb into his lap. "Actually, I think he's chosen both of us." "Both?" the girl repeated, confused. "A shared familiar," Morticia explained, gliding up behind Harry. "Unusual but not unprecedented. The cat clearly recognizes magical compatibility between you two." The girl's eyes widened as she took in Morticia's dramatic appearance. "Oh. That is, are you suggesting we co-own him?" "It would be practical," Harry suggested, standing with Crookshanks now draped contentedly over his shoulder. "I'll be at Hogwarts most of the year, but Crookshanks would have company rather than being confined to a dormitory alone." "That's actually very sensible," the girl acknowledged, her initial surprise giving way to consideration. "I'm going to Hogwarts too, first year. I've already read all our textbooks, of course, and several supplementary volumes on magical theory and recent wizarding history. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way." She extended her hand somewhat formally. "Harry Potter Addams," Harry replied, shaking it. Hermione's eyes widened again. "Harry Potter? I've read all about you. You're in Modern Magical History, the Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts, and Great Wizarding Events of the 20th Century. Most of which is speculative nonsense," Wednesday interjected, joining the conversation with a small box containing what appeared to be a venomous spider. The books were written without any actual contact with Harry or factual knowledge of his whereabouts. Hermione looked crestfallen. "Oh. I hadn't considered that. Are you saying the books are wrong?" "Wildly inaccurate," Harry confirmed. "I wasn't raised by secret wizard guardians in a hidden training facility, as some sources claim. I've been with the Addams family in America since I was 5. "The Addams family?" Hermione repeated, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I don't think I read about them in any of my background research on Wizarding Society. We exist somewhat adjacent to conventional wizarding communities," Morticia explained smoothly. "Our magical traditions predate the International Statute of Secrecy." Hermione looked fascinated rather than put off by this information. "That's incredible. So you practice different forms of magic? Is it culturally specific? Historically preserved? Are there academic resources I could access to learn more?" Wednesday raised an eyebrow, clearly reassessing the girl. "Your curiosity is not entirely misplaced. There are several anthropological texts on diverse magical traditions in the Hogwarts Library's restricted section. With appropriate permission, of course. Which I'm sure an academically motivated student could obtain," Morticia added with a subtle smile. Hermione beamed. "That would be wonderful. I'm so interested in the cultural and historical aspects of magic. My parents are dentists, non-magical, you know, so everything about the wizarding world is new to me." "Muggle-born?" Gomez asked, joining the growing circle around Crookshanks, who was now purring so loudly he sounded like a small motor. "Splendid. Fresh perspectives are the lifeblood of magical innovation. Why, some of the most creative spellwork I've seen comes from practitioners without preconceived notions of what magic should be. Hermione looked simultaneously flattered and overwhelmed by this enthusiastic validation. Thank you, Mr. Gomez Addams. He seized her hand, shaking it vigorously. Harry's father, adoptive, of course, but family is family. And this is my wife, Morticia, our daughter Wednesday, and somewhere in this establishment, our son Pugsley is probably convincing the shopkeeper to sell him something moderately dangerous. As if on cue, Pugsley appeared, holding a small terrarium containing what looked suspiciously like a baby moke, a lizard capable of shrinking at will to avoid detection. They said I can't have it because it's a Class XXX creature, he reported disappointedly. Even though I explained about my extensive reptile experience. Perhaps another time, dear, Morticia soothed. We've made a new acquaintance, Miss Hermione Granger, who will be joining Harry at Hogwarts. She and Harry appear to be sharing familiar responsibilities for this handsome fellow. She gestured to Crookshanks, who had transferred his affections to Hermione again, rubbing against her legs possessively. The matter of the shared familiar was quickly arranged, with Harry insisting on covering the adoption fee despite Hermione's protests. Consider it an investment in Crookshanks' happiness, he suggested. Besides, familiar bonds are significant magical connections. It feels right that we should both be involved. They exchanged information about their Hogwarts preparations, with Hermione expressing fascination with Harry's unconventional upbringing and Harry genuinely impressed by her thorough academic preparation despite her non-magical background. Perhaps we could meet on the Hogwarts Express, Hermione suggested as they prepared to part ways. I could keep Crookshanks with me until then, since you already have so much to manage with your family visit. Perfect, Harry agreed. I'll look for you on the train. As Hermione departed with Crookshanks and her parents, who had been waiting outside and seemed simultaneously intimidated and charmed by the Addams family, Harry realized he'd just made his first friend in the British wizarding world. The connection felt natural and significant, much like his bond with the half-Kneazle. An intelligent young witch, Morticia observed approvingly. And remarkably open-minded. Muggle-born students often adapt more readily to unconventional magical approaches, lacking the prejudices ingrained in traditional wizarding families. She asks excellent questions, Wednesday acknowledged, high praise from his academically rigorous sister. And recognized the practical value of shared familiar responsibility without excessive sentimentality. She'll be a good friend for you at Hogwarts, Gomez declared with characteristic certainty. Mark my words, that girl has the spark of true magical potential. Reminds me of your mother, from what Minerva has told us, brilliance tempered with compassion. With their shopping completed and evening approaching, the family made their way back to the Leaky Cauldron, where Steelclaw bid them farewell with formal goblin courtesy. The day's public exposure had been largely successful, curiosity and occasional wariness from the wizarding public, but no outright hostility or excessive intrusion, thanks to the goblin escort and the Addams family's natural ability to discourage unwanted approach through sheer presence. As they settled into their accommodations for the night, rooms that Tom the innkeeper had indeed prepared according to Addams' specifications, complete with creaking floorboards and atmospheric drafts, Harry reflected on his first true immersion in the world his parents had inhabited. Diagon Alley, with its blend of the magical and mundane, the ancient and modern, was different from the Addams estate with its unabashed embrace of the macabre. Yet both were undeniably magical spaces, shaped by the traditions and values of their inhabitants. Harry was beginning to understand that he occupied a unique position, able to move between these worlds, appreciating each without being limited by either. A successful expedition, I'd say, Gomez declared as the family gathered in their private dining room for an evening meal. Harry's acquired his school supplies, made a promising new acquaintance, selected a shared familiar, and thoroughly disrupted British wizarding expectations. Couldn't have gone better if we'd planned it. The real test comes at King's Cross, Wednesday reminded them. Platform 9 3/4 will be crowded with traditional wizarding families, many with political connections and preconceived notions about both Harry Potter and the Addams family. Let them stare, Pugsley said loyally. Harry's going to be the most interesting student Hogwarts has seen in generations. Indeed, Morticia agreed. Though remember, Harry, that you're there primarily to learn, both magical techniques and the social dynamics that will shape your future in the wizarding world. Observation before action. Unless action is clearly indicated, Gomez amended. In which case, decisive strikes are preferable to hesitation. Harry smiled at his family's characteristic blend of caution and enthusiasm. I'll remember. Watch, learn, and act only when necessary, but decisively when I do. That's my boy. Gomez beamed. Now, who's for a midnight exploration of that delightfully grim cemetery we spotted on the way from the ministry? I've heard the ghost of Headless Humphrey still wanders there on summer nights. The final days before Harry's departure for Hogwarts passed in a whirlwind of preparation and family time. They explored magical London thoroughly, with Gomez insisting on visiting the Ministry of Magic, just to see their expressions, and Morticia arranging a private tour of the historical magical sites concealed throughout the city. Everywhere they went, the Addams presence caused a stir, but Harry noticed that the initial shock and wariness often gave way to fascination, particularly when Gomez engaged people with his irrepressible enthusiasm or Morticia charmed them with her elegant grace. By the time September 1st arrived, the wizarding papers had run numerous stories about the boy who lived and his extraordinary family, with the Daily Prophet featuring a surprisingly balanced piece by a reporter named Augusta Longbottom, who had actually taken the time to interview the family properly rather than relying on rumor. King's Cross Station on the morning of September 1st was bustling with muggles going about their ordinary business, entirely unaware of the magical community operating in their midst. The Addams family attracted stares even from non-magical observers as they proceeded through the station, their Gothic appearance and Lurch's towering presence making them impossible to overlook. Platform 9 3/4, Gomez announced, consulting a pocket watch that appeared to have several extra hands and possibly teeth. Access through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, marvelous bit of spatial manipulation. The theory behind it is quite fascinating. Involves a permanent partial transdimensional fold with selective permeability. Dear, Morticia gently interrupted, perhaps the technical explanation can wait until after Harry has actually caught the train. Of course, of course. Gomez agreed cheerfully. Practical matters first. Now, the technique is simple, approach the barrier with confidence, and the magic does the rest. Lurch, if you demonstrate. The towering butler inclined his head solemnly, then pushed the trolley containing Harry's trunk directly at the solid-looking barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Instead of crashing, he passed straight through and vanished. Magnificent! Gomez exclaimed, drawing curious glances from nearby muggles. Now you, children. Wednesday, Pugsley, show your brother how it's done. The siblings approached the barrier together, Wednesday maintaining her usual deadpan expression while Pugsley bounced with barely contained excitement. They disappeared through the seemingly solid wall without hesitation. Your turn, Harry, Morticia said, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. We'll be right behind you. Harry approached the barrier, feeling a momentary flicker of doubt. What if it didn't work for him? What if all the other magical children sailed through while he crashed embarrassingly into solid brick? But 6 years of Addams training had taught him to trust his magic, to embrace the impossible as merely improbable. He strode forward confidently and felt a brief tingling sensation as he passed through the barrier. On the other side lay a platform hidden from the Muggle world, where a scarlet steam engine waited next to a platform packed with students and families. Overhead, a wrought iron archway bore the words, Platform 9 3/4, while magical smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd. Owls hooted, cats meowed, and the sound of excited voices filled the air. Gomez and Morticia appeared behind him, followed by Grandmama, Fester, and Thing, who had insisted on coming along for this momentous occasion. The platform fell momentarily silent as the assembled wizarding families registered the arrival of the Addams clan, but the hush quickly gave way to renewed conversation, now with a distinctly different tone as word spread that Harry Potter had arrived. Quite the reception, Morticia observed, her dark eyes sweeping the platform. Though I detect more curiosity than hostility. Progress, perhaps. Harry. A familiar voice called through the crowd, and Hermione appeared, already dressed in her new Hogwarts robes, with Crookshanks securely held in a wicker carrier. I was hoping to find you. I've secured a compartment near the middle of the train, supposed to be the smoothest ride, according to Hogwarts, a history. Excellent planning, Miss Granger, Gomez approved. Strategic positioning. Always important when entering unknown territory. Harry introduced Hermione to the remaining family members she hadn't met in Diagon Alley, including Thing, who shook her hand solemnly, causing her eyes to widen with delight rather than alarm. "Is that an independently animated limb?" she asked with academic interest. "I didn't see anything about those in my reading about magical creatures or enchantments." "Thing is family, not an enchantment," Pugsley explained. "Been with the Addamses for generations. Nobody knows exactly what he is, but he's brilliant with mail and chess." Thing gave a modest bow at this praise. As the whistle blew, signaling 10 minutes until departure, Harry turned to his family, suddenly feeling the weight of the impending separation. For 6 years, they had been his constant companions, teachers, and support system. Now he would be away at Hogwarts until the winter holidays. "Remember everything we've taught you," Morticia said, embracing him. "Trust your instincts, honor both sides of your heritage, and write to us often. And if anyone gives you trouble," Fester added cheerfully, "the exploding ink I packed in your trunk works wonderfully for midnight revenge. Just 3 drops on their pillow and boom. Temporary but satisfying." "Wednesday and I made you this," Pugsley said, presenting a small black box with silver hinges. "It's a communication mirror, enchanted to bypass Hogwarts' anti-electronic wards. For emergencies or just, when you want to tell us about something particularly gruesome in the Forbidden Forest. We expect regular reports on the giant squid," Wednesday added. "I have hypotheses about its magical properties that require verification." Grandmama pressed a leather pouch into his hands. "Emergency potions," she explained. "Labeled for clarity, but I suggest claiming they're ordinary remedies if anyone asks. The British Ministry has such narrow definitions of acceptable brewing." Finally, Gomez stepped forward, uncharacteristically solemn. "Harry, my boy," he said, placing both hands on Harry's shoulders, "you're embarking on a grand adventure, following in your parents' footsteps while blazing your own trail. Remember that no matter how far you go or what challenges you face, you are both a Potter and an Addams. Both legacies give you strength." "We're so proud of you," Morticia added softly. "Not for what you've survived, but for who you've become." Harry hugged each family member in turn, including Lurch, whose rumbling "good luck" was surprisingly emotional, and Thing, who gave his shoulder a reassuring pat. Hermione, watching this farewell with undisguised interest, seemed touched by the obvious love between Harry and his unconventional family. As the final whistle blew, Harry and Hermione boarded the train, finding their way to the compartment she had reserved. Harry leaned out the window to wave as the Hogwarts Express began to move, watching the Addams family grow smaller in the distance, Gomez waving enthusiastically, Morticia's elegant hand raised in farewell, Wednesday and Pugsley plotting something that involved animated gestures, Grandmama throwing what might have been lucky herbs or possibly minor explosives after the train, Fester attempting to stick his finger in a nearby electrical socket, and Lurch standing stoically behind them all. His family. His people. Different from most, certainly, but perfect in their own unique way. "They really care about you," Hermione observed as they settled into their compartment, Crookshanks immediately claiming Harry's lap as his preferred seat. "Your family, I mean. It's obvious." "They're amazing," Harry agreed, stroking the half-Measles fur. "They took me in when I had no one, taught me everything they know, and never once made me feel like I didn't belong. That's what matters, isn't it?" Hermione said thoughtfully. "Not how conventional a family appears, but how they treat each other." She hesitated, then added, "Some of the books I read, they suggested things about your family that seemed rather prejudiced, now that I've met them. The wizarding world has a complicated relationship with the Addamses, Harry explained. They practice old magic, magic that existed before the Ministry started classifying spells as light or dark. That makes some people uncomfortable. But they're not. I mean, they don't seem evil. Harry supplied with a smile. No. The Addams family follows one central principle: harm none who harm none. They're just comfortable with aspects of magic and existence that others prefer to ignore or fear. Death, darkness, the uncanny, these are just parts of life to an Addams, not something to be dreaded. Hermione considered this. That actually sounds rather healthy, psychologically speaking. Fear of death is a universal human anxiety, after all. Coming to terms with it could be liberating. Exactly. Harry grinned, appreciating her quick understanding. Though I should warn you that, coming to terms with it, in Addams' terms might include midnight graveyard picnics and casual conversations with ancestral spirits. Their discussion was interrupted by a knock on the compartment door. A round-faced boy with a worried expression peered in. "Sorry," he said, "but have you seen a toad?" "I've lost mine." "No, sorry," Hermione replied. "But we could help you look. I'm Hermione Granger, and this is Harry Potter Addams." The boy's eyes widened. "Harry Potter? Really? I'm Neville. Neville Longbottom." Harry recognized the name immediately. "Longbottom? Are you related to Augusta Longbottom, by any chance?" "She's my gran," Neville confirmed, looking surprised. "How did you know?" "She wrote an article about my family for the Daily Prophet," Harry explained. It was actually fair and accurate, which apparently is rare for wizarding journalism. "That sounds like Gran," Neville said with a small smile. "She doesn't tolerate nonsense. Says there's enough of that in the Wisingamot without adding to it in print." "Smart woman," Harry approved. "Now, about your toad, have you tried a summoning charm?" Neville looked embarrassed. "I wouldn't know how. Gran says I'm nearly a squib, barely enough magic to get into Hogwarts." Harry frowned at this. His Addams education had emphasized that magical potential often manifested in different ways, and labels like squib were more harmful than helpful. "That's unlikely," he said firmly. "The Hogwarts quill doesn't make mistakes about magical ability. You might just access your magic differently than others expect." "Harry's right," Hermione added supportively. "I've read that magical aptitude can express itself in various ways. Some of the greatest potion makers in history had difficulty with wand work but extraordinary talent with brewing." "Really?" Neville looked cautiously hopeful. "Absolutely," Harry confirmed. "My sister Wednesday says magical affinity is like plant growth, some shoot up quickly, others develop strong roots before showing above-ground progress. Neither approach is wrong." While this conversation unfolded, Crookshanks had been watching with evident interest. Suddenly, he leapt from Harry's lap and darted out the door, which had remained partially open during their exchange. "Crookshanks!" Hermione called in alarm. "I think he's helping," Harry said, rising to follow the cat. "He's half-Kneazle, they're incredibly intelligent and can track magical signatures." The 3 first years followed Crookshanks through the train corridor, apologizing to other students as they passed. The cat moved with purpose, eventually stopping outside a compartment near the end of the train and pawing at the closed door. Harry opened it to find a compartment occupied by several older students wearing green-trimmed robes. Under a seat, looking terrified, sat a large toad. "Trevor!" Neville exclaimed in relief. One of the older students, a girl with long dark hair and aristocratic features, looked up with a raised eyebrow. "Is that creature yours, then?" she asked, not unkindly but with a hint of amusement. "He's been hiding there since Flint tried to practice enlargement charms on him." "Tried and failed," another student muttered. "Couldn't even manage a simple engorgio." Harry stepped forward, aware that they had entered what appeared to be Slytherin territory, based on the house colors. "Thanks for not, permanently transforming him," he said diplomatically. "Neville's quite attached to his familiar." The girl's eyes narrowed slightly as she studied Harry. "You're Potter, aren't you? The one raised by the Addams family in America?" "Potter Addams," Harry corrected automatically, extending his hand. "And you are?" Something like approval flickered across her face at his direct approach. "Gemma Farley. 5th year prefect, Slytherin House." She shook his hand briefly. "The Addams family has an interesting reputation." "Most interesting things do," Harry replied with a slight smile, channeling Morticia's diplomatic poise. Gemma laughed, a short but genuine sound. "Well said. You might do well in Slytherin with that attitude." "He's Harry Potter," one of the other students protested. "He'll be in Gryffindor for sure. Where dwell the brave at heart and all that rubbish." "Potter Addams," Harry corrected again, more firmly this time. "And I don't think family legacy automatically determines house placement. The sorting is based on individual traits, isn't it?" "Technically," Gemma acknowledged. "Though family traditions often run strong." She glanced at Neville, who was clutching Trevor tightly. "Longbottom, right? Another traditional Gryffindor family." Neville looked uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "My parents were Gryffindors," he admitted. "But I'm not sure I'll follow them." "House placement isn't a measure of worth," Hermione interjected, displaying characteristic confidence despite being surrounded by older students. "Each house values different qualities, all of which are necessary in a functioning society. Blind courage without cunning strategy is just recklessness, while ambition without loyalty or intellectual curiosity becomes hollow achievement." The Slytherin stared at her in surprise, and Harry bit back a smile at his new friend's academic assertiveness. "And you are?" Gemma asked, reassessing the bushy-haired girl. "Hermione Granger." "Granger." One of the boys frowned. "Not a wizarding name." "I'm Muggle-born," Hermione stated without apology. "First witch in my family." A tense silence followed this declaration, several of the Slytherins exchanging glances that suggested this information changed their assessment of her. "Interesting friend you've made, Potter Addams," Gemma said finally, her tone carefully neutral. "You might find your choice of companions influences certain social dynamics at Hogwarts." "I choose friends based on compatibility and shared interests," Harry replied evenly, "not bloodlines or social expectations. The Addams family has always valued talent and character above ancestry." Another significant look passed between the Slytherins, and Harry realized he had just made a subtle but clear statement about his position on blood politics, a stance that might not align with traditional Slytherin values but reflected his genuine beliefs. "We should return to our compartment," Hermione suggested, sensing the undercurrents. "Thank you for looking after Trevor, even if it wasn't intentional." As they turned to leave, Gemma called after them, "Potter Addams." Harry paused, looking back. "Whatever house you end up in, things are going to be interesting this year." Harry nodded, recognizing both the prediction and the implicit warning. "They usually are around in Addams," he replied with a smile that was pure Gomez in its combination of charm and subtle challenge. Back in their compartment, Hermione immediately launched into an analysis of the encounter. "That was fascinating. The social dynamics among the houses are clearly more complex than the book suggested. The way they reacted when I mentioned being Muggle-born, some of the old wizarding families believe magical ancestry determines worth," Harry explained, settling back in his seat with Crookshanks immediately reclaiming his lap. "It's nonsense, of course. Magic manifests regardless of bloodlines, and history has repeatedly shown that Muggle-born witches and wizards can be exceptionally powerful." "Like your mother," Neville said quietly, then looked surprised at his own boldness. Harry smiled at him. "Exactly like my mother. One of the brightest witches of her generation, according to everyone who knew her." "And your parents were remarkable too, Neville." The Addams family research into recent wizarding history mentioned the Longbottoms' resistance against Voldemort. Neville flinched at the name, but a flicker of pride crossed his face at the mention of his parents' courage. Gran says the same, he admitted. I just hope I don't disappoint them. You won't, Harry said with certainty. Finding your own path isn't disappointing anyone, it's honoring them by becoming the best version of yourself, not a copy of someone else. The conversation turned to lighter topics as the train continued north, Hermione sharing her extensive knowledge of Hogwarts history, Harry explaining some of the more unusual aspects of his Addams education, carefully omitting the more ministry-forbidden elements, and Neville gradually opening up about his passion for herbology, which clearly outstripped his interest in other magical disciplines. Other students stopped by their compartment throughout the journey, some openly curious about the boy who lived, others pretending casual interest while clearly making assessments about Harry and his companions. The red-haired Weasley family made a particular impression, with Ron, the youngest son, initially starstruck by Harry's famous identity but quickly warming to his straightforward manner, and the twins Fred and George declaring the Addams family brilliantly bonkers, after Harry shared a few anecdotes about Wednesday's experiments and Pugsley's explosions. As the sky darkened outside the train windows and the announcement came to change into school robes, Harry felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The day had provided a sample of what awaited him at Hogwarts: curiosity, preconceptions, potential friendships, and implicit challenges. His dual identity as both Potter and Addams would shape how others perceived him, at least initially. But his family had prepared him well. 6 years of Addams' education had taught him not just magic, but confidence, adaptability, and the ability to navigate social complexities with strategic awareness. Whatever house the Sorting Hat placed him in, whatever challenges Hogwarts presented, Harry knew who he was, not just the boy who lived or the Addams heir, but Harry Potter Addams, a young wizard standing at the intersection of two powerful legacies, ready to forge his own path. As the Hogwarts Express pulled into Hogsmeade Station and the first years gathered for their traditional boat journey across the lake, Harry caught his first glimpse of the castle silhouetted against the night sky, towers and turrets rising majestically, windows glowing with golden light, the entire structure humming with ancient magic that he could feel even at a distance. It's beautiful, Hermione breathed beside him. It's home, Neville added softly, voicing what many felt. Harry smiled, thinking of the Addams mansion with its Gothic spires and sentient architecture, so different from Hogwarts yet similar in its magical essence. It's going to be an interesting 7 years, he predicted, echoing Gemma Farley's earlier assessment. And as the boats glided across the dark water toward the castle that had once been his parents' home, Harry felt a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place, of a journey coming full circle. Whatever challenges awaited him within those ancient walls, he would face them as both a Potter and an Addams, honoring both legacies while writing his own unique story. The boy who lived had returned to the wizarding world, but not as anyone had expected. And that, Harry thought with a grin that would have made Gomez proud, was exactly as it should be. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.